This episode is brought to you by RAYCON. You never know where life is going to take you, but RAYCON's everyday earbuds offer premium audio that goes wherever you go. And their latest model is better than ever with a 32-hour battery life, active noise cancellation, and multi-point connectivity to pair with 2 devices at once. RAYCONs bring you top-tier audio quality at just half the price of other premium brands. And they even offer a 30-day happiness guarantee. No questions asked. Get 15% off RAYCON's everyday earbuds at buyraycon.com/command.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks.
How's it? It's Josh Lee Kwai.
And today we are talking about the hottest, coolest, most powerful new cards in the 99 from Final Fantasy. The set is huge and has a ton of powerful and weird new card designs. We're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, we're going to start with one that's a little crazy. Like,
this
you look at the
wild.
power and toughness box, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, and just the rules text, it is Ancient Adamantoise. Toist, like a tortoise. It's 5 green, so 8 mana altogether for a turtle. It is an 8/20 with Vigilance and Ward 3. Damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps. All damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. And when this creature dies, exile it and create 10 tapped treasure tokens.
So you get a rebate with interest on the 8 mana.
Yeah.
You get 10 back when it dies.
And in the meantime, you can't take any damage and neither can any of your other stuff.
Yeah, and you have to track the damage on this thing, making it a little like Hearthstone or something.
Yeah.
And it's an 8/20. I mean, the milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. Like, that is a butt.
I mean, I looked it up. I was like, this has got to be the highest toughness ever printed. Because I remember this feeling like when Charex came out.
Right.
And he's a 0/17. And we were like, what? And now this is an 8/20 in green.
Is this the biggest toughness we've ever seen?
It is the biggest toughness on a black bordered card. Technically, Big Furry Monster is a 99.99,
yeah.
but it's hard to beat the Ancient Adamantoise. This is a big creature. And there's a lot of really cool ways to break this.
Yeah, I mean, you can make it so that it can't really take damage. Vigor is the first thing that comes to mind.
Definitely.
Yeah, so now it's like all damage that would be dealt to everything goes to this thing, but Vigor says, well, that damage just gets turned into counters.
Right.
So never mind that.
Yeah, so your 8/20 is getting bigger all the time. He doesn't have Trample, he has Vigilance and Ward, but that's still going to be a really big turtle and a big problem for your opponents to figure out.
I think the Ward's really important, too, because it makes it harder to just, fine, removal spell it. I mean, it's an overcomable ward amount, but we've talked about this many times, just how Ward is so much more powerful than it reads.
Right.
People just really don't want to play that extra mana and really waste their whole turn getting rid of something.
It is really a strange card because you're like, it's an 8/20, but if you block with it, that damage stays.
Yeah.
So you're like, is it worth it for me to I guess I could take the damage and it still goes directs to the turtle, so you might as well block with it. The math is wild.
It's an 8/20. It's going to eat almost anything coming at it. So I think you're just going to block most of the time. And people are not going to throw stuff at it because it's like, sure, it's now a 8/12, but my thing died, so you lost a card. I'll trade a card for 8 damage on this thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think most of the time you are going to block with it. You're fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can prevent damage done to this thing. White is predictably very good at this. It does feel like a pretty white card, which is interesting. Like, the damage redirection is not usually something that green is very good at. So this is kind of a weird color choice, in my opinion, for the turtle. But if you combine it with white, then you have a lot of the great damage prevention stuff. Like Crystal Barricade is a card that just says, prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. So now you don't block with the turtle, you take all the damage, that gets dealt directly to the turtle, and that damage is prevented.
Wow.
So now you're like, you cannot have damage dealt to you. And that, I think those are like two cards that are reasonable to see in the same deck, because they're both kind of like high toughness type of things.
Yeah, and maybe you'd put some other cards in the deck now that you have this little package. You put like Pariah or Pariah's Shield or something, and now you can turn other creatures into things
into the turtle. And
that could basically act like a turtle with Crystal Barricade out and things like that. So yeah, I like cards that create like a little weird protection package. and it's like, oh, it kind of fits in my deck, changes it a little, but not, I don't need 20 different cards to make this thing really good.
There's an Assassin's Creed equipment that does roughly the same thing that I don't think a lot of people have clocked. It's Caduceus. Yeah, Staff of Hermes. It's 2 and white for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has lifelink. Great. As long as you have 30 or more life, equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has indestructible, but also says prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature, and it equips for white.
Yeah.
So this prevents the damage, gives it indestructible. Both of those things are good, obviously, but you have to have a life total over 30, which doesn't seem that hard with an 820 that now has lifelink in play.
How does indestructible work with this thing if it's got 20 damage marked on it? It just won't die? Because it's not like -1/-1 counters.
It won't die.
Right.
If it's indestructible, it can't die from damage. So my understanding is that it sits on the battlefield and can take damage forever. The difference is if you do something like a heroic intervention that's temporarily indestructible, of course,
it
dies on the end step because the damage doesn't wear off.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I was thinking there's a bunch of different ways to sort of bring this back when it dies. Mm-hmm. That way you'll get the treasures, but also have the protection. So I was thinking like Gift of Immortality seems really, really good.
It does exile itself. So when it dies, exile
it and create 10
tapped treasure tokens. So it does work with something like Kaya's Ghost Form, though.
Okay. So Kaya's Ghost Form is good. Yeah, because it says or put into exile, but Gift of Immortality is bad. Got it. This is good. This is why we do these episodes. Something like Kaya's Ghost Form though seems amazing because you're like protect myself from a big hit or something. Get the 10 treasures. This thing now comes back and can do it again. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I just got through this giant turtle and now I have to deal 20 more damage to get through it. Not to mention at this point, you probably have additional
you got the 10
spells.
treasures too. So it's just like, how are you ever going to get out of that situation? That seems really bad. They got 10 mana up and this thing that's basically preventing all the damage to them.
Yeah. You also mentioned stuff that gives it protection from different colors, which I think is really smart. So stuff like Commander's Plate is really good. It gives you protection from other than your color's identity. So if you're in 1 or maybe 2 colors, the Commander's Plate becomes really good. You do have to pay 5 to equip it because it's not your commander.
But once you get it on there, like what are they supposed to do?
You're unstoppable. Yeah. All of the sort of this and that's are going to be really good in that situation as well.
Yeah, I like to think about cards in the 99, and we say this most episodes, which is like you're not going to change a deck you've got a lot around one card. You just don't want to warp it all the way around like that. But if you look and you say, well, I already have a Commander's Plate and a sort of Feast and Famine in this deck, and it has green in it, then all of a sudden I've got 2 synergy pieces already. I add this card and maybe like 1 other synergy piece. Maybe I put a Kaya's Ghost Farm in there if it's got black, or I didn't have it before. And now it's that little package we were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, this card seems really sweet, and when
really
it comes down, it's going to cause some groans, which I love.
Honestly, you don't need all that synergy for it to be pretty good. Just a thing that's big that comes down and just says, hey, it's going to keep me safe for a minute here, going to keep my other creatures safe, and also it'll just rebate me 10 treasure at some point.
Yeah.
Like, that card doesn't require a lot of synergy. The only downside is the mana cost. So you just have to be in a deck that's like, hey, I don't mind paying 8 mana for stuff, and I get there. I can get there most games. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even just sneak attacking this thing in is not bad, right? Like, just get the 10 treasures for 1 of your 1 red mana.
Yeah, I mean, you could sneak it in, fog a combat, and then stack it on end step and get 10 treasures. That seems pretty good.
It's pretty sweet. Oh, yeah, it's also really good, I was saying, with damage-based wraths.
Sure,
so Blasphemous Act and like Earthquake and Chandra's Ignition type of stuff, right? Because it's going to protect all your other stuff. It will die. You'll get the rebate on the treasures, and you'll have created a one-sided wrath. Out of your Blasphemous Act. Again, because all that damage just goes to this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, that's another thing. I got a Commander's Plate, I got a Sword of Feast and Famine, I got a Blasphemous Act in this deck. Geez, I just slot this card in, and now it's just going to be good in my deck.
Yeah, it's a really cool card. I think we're going to see it used in some very interesting ways. It is not the only cartoonishly huge thing that they have put into this set. And so I want to mention these two together because they just feel like it gives you a good idea for what they're doing with Final Fantasy. This is Jumbo Cactuar.
This card is a little crazy. It is 5 green for a creature plant. It's a 1/7, but it has an ability called 10,000 Needles. It says whenever this creature attacks, it gets plus 9,999 power and plus 0 toughness until end of turn. Yeah. So it becomes a 1,000.
10,000.
A 10,000 power, 7 toughness thing.
Yeah, a classic 10,007.
10,007, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to abuse something with 10,000 power, but it is fun to go through. Obviously, this card is going to be really good with trample and really good with haste. I think those are the two biggest keywords that you're looking for if you're putting this into your deck.
Yeah, I mean, just haste alone, if somebody doesn't have a blocker and you cast this thing, they're dead, right? Like, And of course, you want to give the trample just in case there is a blocker, because unless they have, was that 9,960
toughness,
they're going to be dead as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So at its base, if you just got anger and stuff in your deck, this becomes a candidate to go in there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but also there's a bunch of ways to just abuse a creature if it has really high power.
Right.
But before we talk about all those cool ways to abuse this card, we're going to take a quick break here and talk about our sponsors. If you like the looks of Jumbo Cactuar or
Ancient Adamantoise,
or there's many cards for Final Fantasy, and I think
about.
it's not like a large stretch to say the Final Fantasy people are very excited about. Yeah, cardkingdom.com/command is the best place to go to pick up those cards, Final Fantasy cards, any of the cards we're going to talk about that go with the Final Fantasy cards. Maybe you're building a brand new deck around one of the cool Final Fantasy legends like Cloud or something like that. You're going to need a bunch of cards from Magic's past to go into those decks. Cardkingdom.com/command is great because they have all the cards you're looking for in the versions you're looking for, and they are very professional. They get you your cards in the mail and to you as fast as possible. It all comes in one convenient package, not a bunch of separate packages. So if you're like me, new sets come out, you're building decks, you really get excited about the deck you're building. You want the cards in your hand so you can sleeve them up and play it right away. Cardkingdom.com/command is going to allow you to do that as quickly as possible. That's why we use them ourselves.
And once those cards are in your hand, you've got to keep them safe and protected. Go to ultrapro.com/command for the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. MAGICCON is coming up, which means it's time that we recommend the Mana 8 line
they're
to
awesome.
bring to MAGICCONs. They're the coolest looking product, especially when you can combine them with signatures. So they're big and white and clean, but that means if you get it signed by content creators or artists or just friends that you played with throughout the event, you can make a real memento out of the Mana 8 line. And it's legible and looks cool for the end of time. To the end of time. The Mana 8 line has also been expanded.
Might be overselling it a little.
I am.
End of time.
At the end of time, you will have this.
Legally, I'm not sure that that's true, but let's keep going.
I declare. I don't know. I imagine time will have some effect on it.
Eventually.
The Mana 8 line has been expanded, so they do have Mana 8 storage boxes that are like that same sort of classic bright white stuff that you can have branded with each color, so it's really great for storing, like, here's my red cards and green cards. I really like this line. I think it makes your collection look good, even when it's on a shelf and out of the way, which is what your partner and family demand of you. Get it into a box and off the kitchen table with ultrapro.com/command.
Yeah, I was just on Shuffle Up and Play. A lot of people were asking where I got those sleeves, and they were the Mana 8 black sleeves.
They're cool,
Yeah, so, love those. And then finally, the final way to support all of our content is directly if you go to patreon.com/command zone. Our patrons get all kinds of cool perks, like they get access to talking with Rachel, myself, Jimmy, our entire team on our Discord. We're on there each and every day interacting with people. They get access to exclusive content like Turn Talk, which comes out after every single episode of Extra Turns, where the players sit around and talk about the game afterwards. You get a lot of cool insights from the players, cool ways to think about the game. I learn something every time I watch Turn Talk. And of course, one of the big perks is we shout out one lucky patron every single episode. And this episode is dedicated to
Rachel Canepayor. Rachel, you rock. Or maybe Rachel, but fancier than me. I'm not sure.
All right, let's get back to the cards that go in the 99. We're still talking about Jumbo Cactuar.
And I threw my card with all the notes on it.
Oh, you should probably pick that up. I threw it too.
Okay, the guy a little hasty. Speaking of getting hasty, I was looking for cards that like either combine haste or really built around haste for this to be in the 99. I mean, this seems completely foul in a Surak and Goreclaw deck.
Oh, yeah.
You remember this? We played against this one, obviously, because Graham played it.
Yep.
But it says other creatures you control have trample, and whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. So it's 10,001 damage coming your way with haste and trample.
That's you're dead. Yeah.
And Kenrith, the Returned King, has a single red activated ability that gives all of your creatures trample and haste.
Yeah, if you have a Kenrith deck, this just is going in there, right?
It's gotta be.
One card kill somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a removal check to be like, no, you better have something.
It's tough because you don't see it coming. So it could look pretty innocuous, and then you're just dead out of nowhere. You don't think like empty board with a Kenrith, I'm probably dead next turn. I better leave up my removal. But like it is quite a bit of mana, right? So you're going to need 7 plus the 1 red, right? So, but still.
You're in green.
Yep.
So haste is definitely one way that you can abuse it. You definitely want to get this thing into combat. Flinging a 1/7 isn't all that impressive, but if you've gotten that attack trigger through, anything you can do to fling that creature and do non-combat damage is going to be very powerful.
Yeah, it will remain the size that it is from that attack until the end of turn. So yeah, a fling you can just do, but like, yeah, there's other creatures or abilities that allow you to sort of virtually fling something.
Yeah, I was looking at commanders that do this pretty reliably and are very power-based, and like Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes is a big one. You can dome somebody for 10,000. It's not a hamster, so you don't deck yourself.
Which is nice. Or a downside if you're me, but...
That's true.
You don't draw your own
live your best life. Jarad Golgari Lichlord is basically a fling in black.
Yep.
But you do have to get that attack trigger in. If you're playing against decks that may have this Jumbo Cactuar in it, anything you can do to prevent that attack trigger from happening, I think you kind of have to do, because you're not going to see some of these fling effects coming, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, I can chump block 10,000. It doesn't have trample. Like, even if it attacks this turn, it's fine. But if they go, okay, second main phase, play Minsk and Boo, fling it at your face, now it's a little bit more difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I like Jarad because it's going to kill all your opponents, right?
That's true.
Yeah, it's going to hit everybody. Yeah, I think that's just going to be hard to see coming. I mean, one thing about Jarad is that the haste is harder to grant.
Right.
But not impossible. You just need a Greaves or a Concordant Crossroads or something like that.
Or an instant speed reanimation spell.
Yep. So these are definitely things that I think are going to happen. But that's what I like about a fling or something in addition to the attack, is you can now at least take out 2 players, maybe, like right, hit one. And a card that just... KO's one player is good, but not necessarily like crazy game breaking.
Yeah.
And generally that's scary enough that the other 2 players will then immediately try and kill you. So it's really nice if you can get another opponent with this.
Right.
Yeah. I was looking at like Chandra's Ignition as another way of like, okay, I can now win the game off of the attack. It sort of has to live through the attack, or you got to be able to cast it at instant speed or something like that.
Yeah.
I really liked Rite of Consumption.
Oh, this is a great one.
Which is sort of a black fling. Now, it only hits a player, so it is kind of narrow, but it's one in black. You sacrifice a creature when you cast it, and then it deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target player, but then you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way.
Right.
So that you kind of can get the upside of like, oh, I gained 10,000 life.
Gaining 10,000? Yeah, that feels okay.
You might be in a good spot.
That's
2
fine.
players down, and I'm at 10,000. Go.
Pass.
Also, just Altar of Dementia, I thought.
Sure, yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is you just get the attack off, and even if they could block or go to remove it, you can
mill
still...
10,000.
Yeah, mill 10,000 cards. Sounds fun.
I played against this card this weekend, and it's really good with Mage Slayer.
Yeah.
This is an equipment that says whenever an equipped creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. And you're like, chump blocking? Cute.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah. Mage Slayer is an old school card that we don't see as much anymore. But in the decks that are like Xenagos or something like that, where they're just like playing big things, doubling their power, this is probably going in a deck like that, giving it haste and trample. And this is saying like, you might not even be able to chump block it. This is another sort of virtual trample, I'd say.
Right. There's a lot of ways to abuse a creature with 5 digits in its power toughness box. But this one's really sweet. My big question, I guess, with Jumbo Cactuar is, like, if somebody just plays this and passes, how do you respond?
I mean, you have to kill it or have a removal spell ready. And even a removal spell ready might not be good enough, right? Heroic Intervention. I would just not mess around. Kill it if you can. Obviously, point it out and make it as scary as possible to your opponent so they'll remove it if they can. But I think you have to act as if that thing will kill me and maybe all of us if we just let the person untap with it, right?
Right, because they attack with a Chandra's Ignition. That's the game if people don't have removal spells. So I do think it sets off alarm bells for sure. It's a little different than a lot of threats like this where you're like, oh, it'll kill one person, then that's not really my problem because of its capacity to be flung or to be, manipulated in other ways.
There's a million different things
extra
you can
combats.
do.
Now it's 10,999 power.
Oh, it was fine when it was 10,000, but now that it's almost 20,000 and now I'm dead.
Yeah, if you're gaining infinite life and people ask for a number, make sure it's higher than 10,000. Well, that is the Jumbo Cactuar. Some weird, wacky stuff going on in this set. And that continues into the next set of cards as well. They were definitely getting creative with the design in Final Fantasy. We're going to talk about a cycle that they released of towns. These are monocolored lands with adventures attached to them.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that, but let's just read one real quick. It's the white one. It's Ishgard, the Holy Sea. It is a land town. Its regular side, its non-adventure side, is just enters tapped and taps for white mana. But it has an adventure called Faith and Grief, which is 3 white for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target artifact and or enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand. Then exile this card. You may play the land later from exile. Okay. So this is a sort of regrowth for enchantments and artifacts for 5 mana at sorcery speed, and also just is a land. Now, if you cast the regrowth part, then you can just play it as a land for that turn if you want to at any point. Which means that the comparisons to MDFCs are kind of interesting because in MDFC you kind of choose one or the other. This is if you do the adventure part, you can get the land part.
Right.
So you can kind of get a 2-for-1 naturally out of these.
Yeah, I mean, that's really powerful. Obviously, they've sort of adjusted the cost of the adventure spells to make sure that it makes up for the fact that it is also a land.
Yeah.
But it does mean that these are fully 2 cards in one, where MDFCs are sort of, okay, it's one or the other. This is, well, you get the land or you get the spell and the land, which is even more incentive for you to treat it as a spell, to want it to be a spell, because then it's both. But it's also a land that you can just play. So it's hard to underestimate, or it's hard to overstate how powerful that is, just having both. We play a lot of MDFCs around here. We play a lot of channel lands, and this is a variant on that.
Well, and Rachel, you've recently been sort of the champion of, people aren't playing enough lands in their deck, and 38's the sort of magic number that you've really been, a proponent of. And I am too.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint that as if I'm not on your side. But this has been sort of an issue that, you've been pushing forward to the community of like, hey, people are not running enough lands, and there's a bunch of ramifications to that. And one of the downsides of playing more lands is you can be susceptible to flood, or you can just, not feel like your deck is as fun or is going to be able to do as much stuff. And cards like this, and this is why we run a lot of MDFCs, count as a land, one of your 38, but they also count as a spell, so all of a sudden the density of both things can be a little bit higher.
Yeah. If you can tighten up that overlap, your deck just works better. If you have more lands, great. If you have more recursion, great. Both of those numbers you want as high as possible that you can fit into the 99, of course.
Yeah, and this one seems quite good to me as far as like this effect is going to be good in the decks that want it. If you care about enchantments or artifacts, you have to have a high count of one or the other, or maybe you look at your deck and it's a deck that's like, oh, I've got 15 artifacts and 15 enchantments. I think you just want to be above like 25 of those combined. Then this all of a sudden becomes, a 5 mana sort of draw 2, but you get card selection later in the game, and you would never cast it early in the game anyway. It's 5 mana. But that is the thing you want, but then also just hit your land drop early in the game when you need to, and we all have, that's one of the things about playing Magic is like, you are always going to have a certain percentage of games where you're just kind of scrambling to hit land drops. And that's one thing I would say about these is like, yes, it's incentivized to try and get that 2-for-1, get that value of like casting the spell, then playing the land. But if you are going to miss your land drop, you don't think about it. You play this as your land.
You have to, yeah. Because if you miss your land drop, you're not getting to 5 mana anyway.
You're just not going to win very many games where you miss even a single land drop.
Yeah.
So you just have to hit your land drop, and you just say like, yeah, I'd love to get those things back later, but yeah.
This is a very powerful one of the series. Obviously, it's pretty narrow. You want to make sure you have those 25 to play, but it is also one that when you draw it in the late game, you're going to be like, oh my God, this changes everything. I can get my Skull Clamp back. Yep. I can get like a major combo piece back.
Get your Heuristic Study back. Get your Esper Sentinel back. Also, there's probably a piece they removed because it was really good, enchantment or an artifact, and you're like, cool, get that back online. Can you deal with it a second time? Like, yeah, these are just very powerful.
Yeah. So I think this is one of the better ones of the cycle. We are going to move on to the next one, which is a little bit more narrow, but is still very good in the decks that it's good in. This is Jidoor, Aristocratic Capital.
Listen, I thought it was Titus, so don't ask me.
It's
Titus, by the way.
The comment says Titus.
I thought it was Cecil. It's Cecil or something. I don't know. Yeah, all the pronunciations.
I say Cecil because that's the only way I've heard it pronounced. But this is Jidoor. Aristocratic Capital. This is the blue one. So it's a land that enters taps and it adds blue. It's a land town and its adventure is Overture. 4 blue for a sorcery. Target opponent mills half their library rounded down. So it's a 6 mana sorcery. It mills one of your opponents for half their library. So obviously this is in a mill deck or a reanimator deck or something that takes advantage of your opponent's graveyards.
Yeah, I would say I like this one because it's very powerful and you know where it goes. It's not going to go in every blue deck. You have to care about graveyards or milling.
Right.
And you have to care about your opponent's graveyards because you can't mill yourself, which is a downside. The ability,
for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely would be stronger. And I think this is fine. It's the card's strong enough.
Yeah.
But it would be stronger if you could mill yourself.
But if you could mill half your deck, oh my gosh.
But if one of your game plans is to mill your opponents out to make them have no cards in their library, this is going in your deck. And if one of your game plans, one of your major game plans, is to regrow stuff or reanimate stuff out of your opponent's graveyards, then this is going in your deck. And I think if one of those things is not true, this is not going in your deck, which is great because it's pretty easy to figure out whether you want it or not.
Right, yeah. That one, I like that this is a more narrow MDFC because we've seen so many MDFCs or MDFCs, you know what I mean? I'm doing air quotes for those who are doing audio only. Because we've seen so many that are so generically good in so many decks that a lot of the same MDFCs are getting played over and over and over and over and over
you're
again.
Just seeing Volaged Recovery every time you play against green.
Volaged Awakening is in everything. You're like, I'm playing.
Because there's almost zero cost. If you're in a red deck and you got Volaged Awakening, it costs you nothing to put in there. So every red deck just says, I'll play it.
But Jidoor is like, okay, I'm playing a mill deck. Now I can start looking at it, which I like a lot.
Yep.
But let's move on to the black one. This one's quite good, I think.
Midgar, City of Mako. It is a land town. It's the black one. So it enters taps for black. And its adventure is called Reactor Raid, which is 2 and a black for a sorcery. It says you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. If you do, draw 2 cards. So we see a lot of these type of effects that are like sack something, and usually it's sack something, draw 2 cards for 2 mana usually.
Or 1 mana.
Yeah, sometimes
like Village Rites,
Yeah, right. Sometimes it's like rebates you a treasure or something.
Right.
And this is so a little bit more mana, but on a land. So it's kind of, I don't really think about this the way you said this, which was you kind of draw 3 cards, right? 3 mana, draw the 2 cards, you sack something obviously, but then you get the land that you can play, which is almost like drawing a 3rd card. So 3 mana, draw 3 cards sounds pretty good. Sounds a lot better,
good.
yeah.
And you're like, you can sacrifice an artifact or a creature here. So you can sacrifice a treasure token or a clue token, food token, any of little scrap you have sitting around. Obviously, the sacrifice is an upside in the decks that play these kinds of effects.
Right.
But because this is an MDFC, I think you run this in a lot more black decks because it's just like, if I need the cards and I have something I can cash in for that, like you will fire off that draw spell, even if you're sacking something that you like aren't super stoked to give up, but are like, I need the cards more than I need this thing on the battlefield.
Yeah, I like this card. I think it's going to see a lot of play, but I do think it's a little more narrow for me. I don't think I'm going to put it in, because I think the big thing for me is not an instant, and a lot of reasons I play the sacrifice cards are because they are instants, and sometimes you can get a little value out of a removal spell coming in, and you can kind of get them a little bit. They go to remove something, cool, I'll sack it, I'll get my effect, I'll draw a couple of cards, and that is my 3 for 1, but for, it's 1 loss, a card for my opponents, and 2 for me, and this doesn't have that ability, and I don't know that proactively for 3 mana at sorcery speed, I often want to just be like, but if a deck has any amount of expendable things, like creating treasure or clues or tokens of any kind or whatever, then all of a sudden I think this goes in. And a lot of black decks meet that bar. It's not like
if you got any sort of reanimator stuff, if you got any sort of like graveyard that matters anything, sacrificing becomes a lot less of a cost.
Yeah, but I don't know if that just put in a sacrifice deck. I want to be creating expendable things that are like tokens and things that, I get a lot of them. They're kind of extra. They're laying around. I can sacrifice them at very little cost. Sure. Again, I think that's probably over half of black decks. Most of them do some amount of that. So I think we're going to see this card quite a bit.
That is Midgar. We're going to move on to the red one here. This is Lindblum Industrial Regency. This is the red one. So it's a land that enters tapped and adds red, and it has an instant adventure. This is Mage Siege, 2 and a red. Create a 0/1 black wizard creature token with, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent. You get half a gutter snipe and a land on this card.
It's really good.
It's really good.
I like this one a lot, and I think like red-blue decks in particular, we're probably going to just see this a ton because any deck that just sort of wants to hold open mana, leave its options open, and then on the end step before your turn, based on what's happened, you know, I didn't need to counter anything. I didn't need to remove anything. Cool. I need proactive things that I can do in that case that aren't just like, oh, okay, now I untap and I just wasted the mana I had open. I just didn't end up using it. That's when you sort of lose as the sort of more control-y or stormy deck. And this gives you a thing to do, right? Oh, cool. I didn't need to remove or counter anything. I'm going to put out the adventure side of this thing, and now I can just play the land. And I got my 2-for-1. I got some board presence. This is definitely an effect that I'm going to want that's going to help me, like, you know, start taking control of games or start killing people or whatever. Yeah, I really like this card a lot.
Yeah, I think this one's the most powerful of the bunch. I think, it is narrow, but narrow limited to Spellslinger type of decks.
Yep.
It could be, I guess if you're an artifact stormier deck, you could include it as well, because it does trigger off of non-creature spells rather than instant or sorceries.
Yeah.
But I think you know exactly where this goes, and if you have any kind of gutter snipey type effects or any of the, you know, the archers or the wall that deals damage, all that, Lindblum is right at home, and you're going to be excited to play it.
All right, the last one is the green one. It's called Zanarkand, Ancient Metropolis. Its adventure side is called Lasting Faith. It's 4 green for a sorcery. Create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token. Put a 1/1 counter on it for each land you control.
Okay, make a big thing.
Just kind of the most boring of them, and I think probably the least, at least exciting.
I think if you're casting this, it's an emergency, is what it feels like, where you're like, okay, my board just got wiped. I don't have a lot of cards. I have a land in hand. Sure, I guess I'll make like a 6/6 and I'll play this land and I'll pass. And I don't feel great about it, honestly.
Probably losing that game if you took 6 mana and the best thing you can do is make an 8/8.
Yeah.
Like that is just not how Commander works. Once you're up at those mana numbers, the things people are doing are very powerful. If what you've got to do is make even if it's a 10/10 for 6 mana, I think you're just very far behind in that game. So this doesn't advance a game plan that's probably, you know, going to lead to victory. The only thing I'd say is if you have a lot of 1/1 counter synergies, maybe it's possible that this becomes better. Even then, though, like how big does it have to be until you're like happy? Like you pay 6 mana. What's the size the creature has to be where you're like, this is roughly equivalent to other 6-drops I would play in a deck?
9,999.
Wow, high standards over here for Rachel Weeks.
I don't know. I feel like
a
I need
20/20. Are you happy?
I need like additional synergies, like sort of with anything. Like I would want it in a deck that either cares about +1 counters or cares about having a big thing. Like I would want it to be in a greater good deck where I can turn that into something that matters. Because like having a thing on the board is better than having nothing on the board. But it is difficult to translate just a vanilla. You know, like how often do we play Gigantosaurus?
Right. Yeah, I think it was a 6 mana, like 20/20. I'd start thinking about it.
Right, yeah.
Even then, you're like, I don't like just big creatures. If the creature just has big, it's not generally that appealing to me.
Yeah.
There is a number, though, right? Like if it's 100 for 6 mana, you probably start
if you have 100 lands in play.
I'm just saying, like, forget how many lands you've got in play. Like if a card said, 4 green, it's a 100. I think people probably play that card.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, there certainly is a number,
but it ain't 8, it ain't 10, it ain't 12.
Yeah, it doesn't make this card unplayable. I still think like there's still all the positives of this just being a spell and a land. If you want a really high land count, if you're in a lands deck where you're like, I want to play like 50 lands, this is a great option
because you're susceptible to flood in those.
Right.
So this gives you a thing to cast at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that is where I would start looking at it. Is if I'm in a deck that really wants a high land count, which makes sense. You're going to make a big thing.
Yeah.
If you have more lands in play, and you can really take advantage of just it being 2 things.
Okay, that is the cycle of the adventure towns, the adventure lands.
They're all playable for sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, the red one is the best, and the black and white one are behind, and then the mill one is obviously, if you're in a mill deck, it's great.
Question for you: do you think these adventure lands are better than MDFCs or worse?
Are we talking about the formatting, or are we talking about these specific like spells? Like,
I don't
are
mean these specific
adventure
ones, just the idea of Adventurelands. Is that better or stronger or weaker than MDFCs?
I think they are certainly better than the ones that come in tapped, the Bala Ged recovery cycle.
Yeah.
And I think they might be a hair worse than the ones that you can bolt in. Just because you can use them right now when you're in a land emergency.
Right. These have no ability to come in untapped. Right. There's just no option for you.
They just come in tapped, yeah. But I do think it's close because the ability to both cast the spell and play the land is huge.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think besides the MDFCs that can come in untapped, if you take all the ones that have to come in tapped, I think Adventurelands are just kind of more powerful naturally. They're just 2-for-1s.
Right.
Whereas MDFCs aren't, unless the effect they're giving you is a 2-for-1. But yeah, it is a different thing. And I think as a result, we're going to see quite a few of these Adventurelands in play because it's all. I wouldn't replace Bala Ged Recovery because it's a really good one. But some of the Glasspool mimicky stuff where you're like, I just need more spells. I'm just putting stuff in that's generically okay. And it's like, 8 times out of 10, I play the land side of those cards. But, that's where it's like, I might be looking to add one of these Adventurelands.
Where are channel lands for you?
Oh, I think channel lands are generally better
than all of those.
Boy,
they're always instant speed, and they always come in untapped, and that is a big deal.
Yeah, I think those two things. It's like you said with the MDFCs, the untapped ones are sort of in a different category because an untapped land is just a lot better, and
it is freer if it's untapped.
And honestly, you only have room in your deck for so many lands that come into play tapped. Even at 38, if all 38 came into play tapped, I'd be like, whoa. Let's go down to like, maybe less than 10 tapped lands. I mean, I only want like 7, of my 38.
You do want to curve out to some extent.
Yeah, because it really hurts you on turn 2 where it's like, I got land drops for days, but like I can't play my 2-drop on turn 2. I have too many tapped lands. So yeah. Okay, well, speaking of lands that come into play tapped or not. Yeah,
there's one more town we wanted to talk about before we moved off of the towns, and there's not a lot to say other than, this one's good.
Yeah, but it is interesting because it has this clause. So it's called Starting Town. It's a land town, and it says this land enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game. And what it does is it taps for colorless, or you tap it, pay 1 life, and add 1 mana of any color. So it's like a better City of Brass-ish,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's close to Fabled Passage, but Fabled Passage only gets you 1 color. So it's like Fabled Passage, gives you a tapped land for the first 3 turns, right? Until you have 4 lands.
Right. Interesting.
So it's like that same sort of tempo of Fabled Passage, but it's the power of City of Brass or Mana Confluence. Comes in untapped, doesn't force you to pay the life.
That's what I mean. It's a little better than City of Brass in some ways because City of Brass says, if you tap me for mana, you'll take the damage. This says, if you don't need color, no damage.
You're fine, yeah.
But it has that clause that's a little hard to evaluate of like, if it's later turns of the game, it comes in tapped.
How much do you play City of Brass or Mana Confluence?
Not that much.
I don't either.
Yeah, you don't need those anymore. They were a lot more useful like 7 years ago, before the Triomes existed, before like so many dual lands have come out. The Battle Bond lands didn't exist back then. Like it was a different landscape.
Right.
Yeah. We both got it.
I don't play them as much anymore because I don't think the City of Brass has come down a lot in terms of price. But for a long time, Mana Confluence and City of Brass were more expensive than they were necessary.
For sure.
And it feels like Starting Town is going to live in that similar spot, specifically because it is going to be standard legal.
Yeah.
So these are going to be 4-ofs in certain decks, in many decks in standard. So I anticipate it will be a very expensive card.
Final Fantasy is already expensive as a set. The cards are hard to get a hold of. I don't know what's going on, but availability has been very low. So yeah, this Starting Town is definitely early on. The price that you're going to be able to find it for on the secondary market is probably going to way outweigh how good it's going to be in your deck. Yeah. I totally agree with that.
I think if you want a City of Brass or you want a Mana Confluence, you could consider a Starting Town and you have it. It's good. It'll do what you want it to do. But if you're like, I need to buy a land to put in this slot, you're better off getting a fetch land or getting a Triome or something that is going to be cheaper and is also going to be as functional.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a lot more cards to talk about, including a few that I think could be staples, especially in specific archetypes. And we're going to get to all of those cards, including Mr. Final Fantasy VII himself.
Well, and my favorite card in the whole set, which is one of those cards
It's not Jumbo Cactuar?
Yeah, that is a cool card. It's one of those cards where my brain is still thinking about how to abuse it. Yeah, all I know is possibilities. I didn't really figure everything out.
We'll get to all those cards and more after a few words from our sponsors.
Come, Mardu Raiders, and heed the voice of victory! Summer is a time to get out into the world and mobilize! But a pair of attacking warriors won't just kill your opponents, they'll also kill the vibe! So instead, I always bring a pair of everyday earbuds from RAYCON! They're the perfect summer sidekick while I slice things off my to-do list, whether I'm blasting bangers at the gym or skewering meat for the grill while playing podcasts. And RAYCON's latest model is better than ever with 32 hours of battery life, multi-point connectivity, and even a lightning-fast quick charge function. These earbuds also come with active noise cancellation, so you don't need to be bothered by chatter or counter spells when it's your turn to rest and relax. Plus, RAYCONs are aggressively costed, starting at just half the price of other premium brands. They even come in the two colors I pair best with, red and black. So if you seek victory this summer, pair up with RAYCON, because while winning is fun, having fun is also winning!
Go to buyraycon.com/command to get 15% off Raycon's best-selling everyday earbuds. Right now, Raycon is offering 15% off their best-selling everyday earbuds only at buyraycon.com/command. Again, that's buyraycon.com/command.
Remember when we did that March Madness tournament bracket for the best skill in Ravnica?
Oh, yeah.
Or the watch party we did for Game Night's MKM.
Good times.
Or when we debated the most powerful card in Commander,
Chromatic Lantern.
Well, if you don't remember it, that's because you've been missing out on our Whatnot streams.
We do a bunch of really cool stuff on Whatnot, and you can catch our next stream on June 13th at 2 p.m. Pacific.
That's release day for Final Fantasy, and we're going to be celebrating in a back-to-back event with The Professor! So you can watch him at 1 p.m. and then hop on over to us right after.
Prof always has a ton of amazing giveaways on his streams. And so do we. Bundles, precons, collector boosters, and even booster boxes.
Plus, we'll be getting up to some fun Magic antics, and these streams only exist on Whatnot, so if you don't want to miss it, you've got to be there live.
And while you're enjoying the show, you can pick up some exclusive Game Nights merch like signed cards and accessories, or we've got a bunch of sealed product too.
If you sign up using our link at whatnot.com/invite/command, you'll get $15 free to use anywhere on the platform.
So come join us June 13th at 2 p.m. and don't forget to use our sign up link, whatnot.com/invite/commands to get those 15 free bucks.
We'll see you there.
See ya.
Welcome, cast fans. Tygam Master Opportunist here from the hit meditation podcast, Just Sky's the Limit. I know I appear calm and collected now, but when I first started casting, running a business felt overwhelming. Thank goodness I found Shopify, who helped me manage a flurry of questions and challenges so I could focus on getting out 2 casts a turn. I mean week. With Shopify, there's no reason to suspend your dreams of starting a business. They have true mastery when it comes to managing inventory, shipping, returns, and more. Plus, they can aid you with tools such as ready-to-use templates for your online store. It's like you have a whole monastery of marketing monks on your side, ready to easily create social media campaigns with unmatched commercial prowess. Shopify is the platform behind 10% of e-commerce in the US, including my hated rivals, the Command Zone. Grr, they just make good stuff. So take it from a master opportunist. With Shopify, your opportunity is now.
Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/TCZ. Go to shopify.com/TCZ. Again, shopify.com/TCZ.
Aha, Psych Rift. Yeah, this deck feels like a 3.
Updating your decks?
No, I'm just sorting them into commander brackets.
Oh, just use ARCHIDEKT. It's the easiest way to get an estimate of your deck's bracket. Plus, you can click the number and it'll lay out the reasoning. It takes things like tutors, extra turns, and land destruction into account, and game changers are all clearly marked. It even recognizes 2-card combos. See? It's saying your deck is actually a 4. It'll be a 3 if you cut Ristic Study.
Huh. Okay, 4 it is.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and check your deck's commander brackets. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about the most powerful cards in the Final Fantasy set. There's a lot of cards. There's a lot more to talk about.
A ton more.
But we have an exciting thing to talk about before we get back into the cards.
There's many pages left.
Oh, my God. There's so many cards in this set.
Yeah, it's very cool.
We are going to be at MAGICCON Las Vegas. We are playing another Game Nights Live. It's going to be on Friday, June 20th at 4 p.m. on the Mana stage. We've got a lot of cool things planned.
A lot of cool things.
We've got some excellent guests coming.
Yes, the guests are Voxy, and the Professor.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be a loud one.
Yeah, sure, those two. Those two. And I don't know if we've said the theme of the...
We haven't really.
Yeah, so Professor is obviously from Tolarian Community College. So we decided that Voxy, Jimmy, and myself would all play representing our own schools, which we have made up, and we've made mascots and logos and everything.
Flags,
yeah,
and
Rachel's been involved in helping us design all the schools to fight against Tolarian Community College. So it's going to be a really fun show. Rachel and Gavin are going to be commentating. If you haven't been to a Game Nights Live, we call people on stage. Everybody
Give stuff away.
Yeah,
we
give
stuff to the audience.
Yeah, it really is like a sporting event or like WWE or something like that. It is a ton of fun. If you're going to be at MAGICCON, make sure you get there on Friday so that you can go to the show. Again, it's at 4 p.m. No additional badge or ticket is necessary.
Yeah.
You can get into the con. You can get into Game Nights Live, but get there early because the seats do fill up. In fact, it's standing room only by the time it starts.
Yeah. All right. And if you want to catch us on the Mana stage, this is also on the Mana stage. We're doing the Magic Pentathlon. It is Command Zone versus Loading Ready Run, the showdown. That is Sunday at 12:30. And that'll be me, Josh, Jimmy against all of your favorites at Loading Ready Run. We're not sure what we're doing yet, but I'm sure it's going to be wild and weird.
They said we're not telling you what the events are. Just be ready for anything. So all I can say is Loading Ready Run, you're going down.
Yeah. And
right.
I'm wearing a wetsuit just in case.
Wait, what?
I don't know. It could be anything, Josh.
Oh, no.
And a helmet.
About wetsuits. You just come out there like...
They didn't tell me anything.
She's a hockey stick.
I wanted to be ready.
Okay, back to the cards in the 99 from Final Fantasy. The first one is probably the most recognizable character in the entire series.
As someone who doesn't know anything about Final Fantasy other than this single person.
And their sword, right?
And their sword, which I found out is not like even a good sword in the game. It's just your starter sword.
Yeah.
That is false advertising.
It's not like a legendary final sword that you get.
It's just a freaking throwaway sword.
Yeah. A lot of people could have Buster Swords. All right, this is Cloud, Midgar Mercenary. It is white for a 2/1 legendary human soldier mercenary. When Cloud enters, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And it says, as long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be good, right?
Anything that double, yeah.
It's a tutor attached to an enhancer. Like, this card's messed up for 2 mana?
Yeah.
On an ETB?
Honestly, I will play Steel Shaper's Gifts in cards, and they will maybe only have 2 equipment in them. If one of them Skull Clamp, I will think about Steel Shaper's Gift in that deck because if I have Skull Clamp in a deck, it is often the best card in the deck that it's in.
Yep.
And I'll usually want one other equipment just in case I draw my Skull Clamp before I draw the Steel Shaper's Gift. But then you just throw in a Sword of Feast and Famine. And it's like...
That's also great with him.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, just the 1 white mana is worth just finding the thing.
Right.
So for the other white mana, you get a 2/1 creature that doubles up equipment triggers.
Right. And it's...
For 1 white mana, that's what you get. Because the other one we already established is worth 1 white mana.
Right. It's Steel Shaper's Gift.
That's an insane rate. The rate just seems completely out of whack.
Yeah, I mean, this is Stoneforge Mystic, but it makes your equipments better that you find, which is, I guess, is what Stoneforge does too. But Stoneforge is also like a multi-format staple for years card.
Yep.
And Cloud...
One of the most powerful cards ever printed.
Yeah, and Cloud is right up there.
Yeah, so you compare it with a million things, but some things that we put down on the list, like Sword of the Animist.
Yeah.
Just want to double ramp. Just want to...
That's fine.
Explosive veggies every time you attack.
That's fine.
Seems good. It finds the sword, too.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, I was looking for I was like, I need equipment that have triggered abilities that are good to double. And that's not a hard bar to hit, honestly. Any of the Sword of this and that's are very good. Sword of Hearth and Home is particularly good with Cloud because it blinks Cloud. So
get another equipment.
So when it hits, if Cloud is the one wearing the Sword of Hearth and Home, it blinks Cloud, and you go get another equipment, and then you get a land.
You could blink another thing, not Cloud twice, but another thing as well, yeah.
So, but it triggers twice, so you can't target Cloud both triggers.
Right.
Because one, you'll fizzle the second one.
Yeah.
So you have to target Cloud and something else, but you do get the 2 lands into play untapped because it doubles that damage trigger.
So you tutor for equipment, you get 2 more lands into play, you blink something else, probably one of your other things, but also you can blink an opponent's things with Hearth and Home, which is something I didn't know, especially if they've stolen something from you, it comes back. But also...
one target creature you own, if they've stolen something.
Yeah, sorry, if they've stolen something, you bring it back. Right. But also... pretty good chance these days, ETBFX, you're just going to have another creature.
Worst comes to worst, you just untap a creature. Like, I've used Sword of Hearth and Home to attack and then blink a creature so I have the blocker back up again.
I mean, I just mentioned Feast and Famine, which 2 triggers off that means that if you have instant speed stuff you can do, you get 2 untaps. So you untap, float all the mana, untap a second time, and then you're still in combat, so it will go away. You have to be able to use that mana right away, but in a deck that can do that, all of a sudden, it's basically like taking another extra turn. So pretty insane.
Helm of the Host is hilarious.
Oh my God.
Because you can put it on Cloud. You get 2 token copies of Cloud. You search for 2 more equipment.
Oh boy.
And now you have just even more clouds running around to double all of the equipments. It is a snowballing problem.
Yeah. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Seems good. I did want to talk about some of the rules interaction with Skullclamp because there was some question. You can get Skullclamp. You can put it in your hand. If you Skullclamp Cloud himself, Cloud will die. And the Skullclamp will no longer be equipped to Cloud by the time the trigger resolves.
Yeah.
So you won't draw 4 cards off of this because he's gone. But you will draw 2, so you pay 2, you go get your Skullclamp, you play the Skullclamp for 4 mana, you clamp the body that just got it, and you have 2 more cards.
It's pretty good because then you have your Skullclamp still.
Yeah, that's still 4 mana for 3 cards, and one of those cards is a Skullclamp.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of benefit to still just getting your clamp and clamping Cloud.
Yeah, so I think Cloud's going to be really good. Obviously goes in equipment decks. I think will go in a bunch of decks that aren't even equipment decks, that just have 3 really good equipment. If one of those equipment is very good, like if there's a Skullclamp that you really want to get, a Sunforger, I really want to get my Sunforger in a game. And then I also just happen to have a Lightning Greaves and a sort of Feast of Famine or something else that are just generically kind of good and can go in the deck. Then all of a sudden there's a little Cloud package that goes in and that can be very strong. In, same thing, if you're a Blink deck and you just happen to have about 3 equipment, I think you can run Cloud. Now, obviously, if you got 10 equipment, Cloud becomes amazing. And there's not very many decks out there that have like 15, 20 equipment. That's usually too many. But I think we're going to see this card quite a bit. It's going to be good.
I did want to mention a lot of the equipment that we talked about already, except for the sort of Hearth and Home and Feast and Famine, which come with a little bit of evasion built in. Most of them don't give Cloud evasion. Yeah. So he's sort of a hard creature to keep on the battlefield to repeatedly double those triggers. Like if you equip him with a Sword of the Animist, he attacks as a 3/2 on the ground. So he's not an easy like body to protect and keep the doubling going, but even getting 1 doubled trigger with Cloud, I do think is good. And you can sort of put your opponents in weird binds to be like, do you want to trade your value creature for my Cloud? And most of the time,
I already got my 2 cards off the sword, or 2 things off the Sword of the Animist, and like, I'll trade for your whatever.
Yeah. I do think that Commander players should probably block more. Should probably make more trades in the early game, especially if there is a creature like Cloud, where you're like, okay, they're going to get a lot of value if they can even get a second attack off of this. So
I'm a big fan of blocking. And people that play against me know. Jimmy knows now. Like, you don't just get a free attack on me. Like, I will give up my creature for your creature, because there's a lot of benefits in metas too, where it's like, well, if I play with you often enough, you just won't be able to do that to me very often because you can't bluff me. So yeah. Speaking of equipment and Buster Swords, I think the Buster Sword in Magic is a little more powerful. It's not so much a starting sword.
It is a good sword.
Yeah, it's quite good. We're gonna compare it to all the sword ofs. That's how good
so it's gotta be good.
So Buster Sword is 3 mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2, and it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost. And it has an equip cost of 2. So if you put this, let's say on Cloud would have 5 power, gets in, hits for 5. You draw a card, and then you can cast a spell with 5 mana value or less. It's the amount of damage that
you
creature
get to do that
did.
Twice with Cloud.
Yeah, true. And then you cast 2 spells with Cloud. Good point.
Yeah.
And it has basically the same casting cost as a Sword of, which is why that's an easy comparison, right? 3 to cast, 2 to equip. Has almost similar effects. Does 2 things when you deal.
Draws, lets you cast a thing for free. Yeah,
triggers on combat damage to a player.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a good equipment.
Yeah.
It just is. It does 2 valuable things in almost any deck. It gives a bigger boost than the sort of Feast and Famine line, the sort of this and that's. It gives a +3/+2. It doesn't give you the protection, which is obviously a big positive of those swords, but the boost does let you cast bigger spells for free. So there's a lot of upsides to this card.
Yeah, you're kind of, in some ways, you get that one extra power and you're trading it. If you're just sort of looking at a sort of and going line by line, what do I get? You're trading it for protection from 2 colors. Right. So I do think that is a thing that makes it slightly less powerful than a sort of, because it's like basically 2 triggered abilities, 3 to cost, 2 to equip, +2/+2, and then this all says +1/+0, and the other thing says instead of that I'll give you protection from 2 colors. Right. So now it's down to like what are the abilities, and a lot of sort ofs, the abilities are not that great. So this is a very relevant ability. You always want to draw cards, and do you want to cast stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Yeah, so those abilities are very strong and contenders with, even the best swords. So I would put it in the conversation as like one of the better sort ofs.
And certainly one of the more generically good swords. There's a lot of very narrow ones, even Sword of Hearth and Home, which I like a lot and put in a lot of decks, is more narrow than this.
Right.
I think the closest comp is something like a Fire and Ice or maybe a Feast and Famine.
Yeah, I don't think it touches Feast and Famine, which is like an extra turn spell thing, basically, which I think is just inherently like more powerful than the drawing card casting spells aspect of this. It's really close to Fire and Ice and might be a little better than Fire and Ice. I think it's closer to that, but that's really good because I think Fire and Ice is probably the second best sword as far as just generic. The protection thing is a big downside though, because you have to deal combat damage to a player. And so often the protection is what gives you the evasion you need. One of the reasons I think Feast and Famine is far and away the best sword is because the 2 colors that it protects from are the most commonly played colors. Green is just responsible for a lot of the creatures that are just kind of around. Black's responsible for a lot of the removal that's around. Like how often have you had a Sword of Feast and Famine and you look around and you go, oh, I don't have any attacks. It's very rare.
It's very rare.
Yeah. So the Buster Sword doesn't give protection, which means you got to figure out how to get it in there for the damage. Which a lot of times can be done by it's just big enough that they don't want to block it, but not always.
Losing the evasion here is a big downside. I also think like one of the bigger downsides of this is it is an equipment. You just need a creature and this one you need an evasive creature that can actually get it done. Otherwise it is stone cold nothing on its own. So it does have this sort of thing where you're like, yeah, if your deck can do that, if it can get it on an equipped creature, if it can deal combat damage, you can take advantage of the Buster Sword, but you do have to get over some hurdles first.
So I guess that leads into our question here, which is what kind of deck wants the Buster Sword or is likely to play the Buster Sword?
For me, it's limited to equipment decks. I don't think I would play it in a deck that doesn't play equipment, like at least a decent equipment package. Like I was imagining it in a deck that I'm like, what if I just have a lot of flyers? Like I'm playing 10 2-mana flyers or something like that for some other combat damage reason. Would I put it in? And I don't think so, unless there's like an artifact synergy or I'm specifically doubling combat damage triggers or something like that. Like I do want to be building around it in some way.
Yeah, I think you could consider it if your commander specifically is sort of low mana value and has evasion and probably flying. Because the scenario where on turn 5, you cast this, equip it to your commander, hit for at least 5. If it had flying, you can pretty much guarantee at least one player you're probably going to hit. Then cast a 5-drop. It's like the Buster Sword kind of didn't cost you any mana in that case, and what happens from there, is not going to blow you out. Although I will say, generally I don't want to put targets onto my commander, and the Buster Sword doing that, what I just said, will make somebody kill it. And one of the things about the sort ofs is that you can sort of justify is like, well, if I put Feast and Famine on this thing or I put Fire and Ice on this thing, 40% of cards that exist will not be able to touch it.
Right.
So that's quite a bit of protection. Is it 100%? No. But you can do things like that. Whereas Buster Sword is like, I don't protect you from anything.
No.
So...
And I do, like, it is very powerful. Even if you're like, I'm just trying to draw a card and I'm going to cast a ramp spell, the people are going, like...
It doesn't matter what you're doing now. I'm worried about what you're going to do next turn, next turn, next turn. Yeah, I got to kill it.
It's the hidden information that's the scary thing about it. I think overall this is a very powerful card. I think it is only really going to go in decks that has specific, like, equipment or, damage synergies. But it is definitely one that is worth looking at if you're in either of those archetypes. Equipment, of course, is one of the most powerful archetypes, or not powerful, popular archetypes in Commander.
Yeah, if you've got an Equipment Voltron deck, then this is definitely going to be better than a lot of the stuff you're running right now.
It's also a great set for that. We're going to move on to the next one, which is pretty equipment focused, but it's too cool not to talk about. It's Firion, Wild Rose Warrior. 2 and a red for a human rebel warrior. He's a legend. He's a 3/3. It says equipped creatures you control have haste. Already great. Whenever a non-token equipment you control enters, create a token that's a copy of it, except it has this equipment's equip abilities cost 2 less to activate. Sacrifice this token at the beginning of the next upkeep.
So it's like sneak attack for equipment?
Sneak
equip.
You have to get it into play yourself, like you have to cast it, but you get 2 of them.
Yeah.
And it equips for free?
Sort of. Only 2, so if it won't work for like really big, crazy equipment, but sure. Sort of, yeah. You definitely get one right now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like you play Firion on turn 3. The haste is already pretty great.
Yep.
That you're just like, okay, if I get an equipment on Firion, he can attack right now.
Yep.
Then if you follow it up with sort of any non-legendary equipment, you're going to have a good turn the turn after that. So you can have, like, you play a sort of Feast and Famine on turn 5, you get a second sort of Feast and Famine that equips for free, and then you can equip the original. Now you have 2 sort of Feast and Famine triggers.
You've got some instance, you're off to the races.
Like,
for sure. Yeah.
And that's not even an equipment that like leaves anything behind. Like I was thinking about this card specifically with equipment that either make tokens, like a living weapon style stuff, not living weapon specifically, because obviously the 0/0
yeah, the one that makes
much.
Rebels was like for Mirrodin.
For Mirrodin.
For Mirrodin.
Or the new hero mechanic in this one.
True, yeah.
It's not. It's job select.
Job select makes a hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great because equipment comes in, it makes a token. This makes a copy of that equipment that makes a token, and then when you sacrifice the sneak attack one or whatever, the token's still there.
You get the free token.
That's cool.
So any equipment that sort of leaves some sort of material behind, I think is going to be really, really, really good with Firion.
Well, and those equipped creatures have haste.
Right.
So they come in, even living weapon would be fine here, right? Make the copy and you're attacking with both things.
Right.
That's pretty sweet. So this is, I didn't think about it this way, but this is kind of a living weapon or like for Mirrodin type of deck, or the job select deck. You want to put in as many of those as you can. I guess it's mono red, so this is probably going in a deck that already has a bunch of those because you're going to need more colors than just one color, because there's just not very many equipment that come in and make a creature attached to them.
Right.
Not enough, certainly, in one color probably to make a whole deck out of it.
Yeah, I that's why it's in the 99, because I think it's going to be a really great tool for these kinds of decks. But it's specifically great with equipment that leave stuff behind. So a Bloodforged Battle Axe was one I thought of. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's
because you play it, you make a token copy, you can equip the token copy for free. You can equip the second one. Then you hit, and you already naturally have a free second.
And the ones you create off the trigger from it won't go away at the end of turn.
No, you get to keep those.
That's cool.
So you make 2 more, and then you sacrifice one of them, but you have 3 on the first turn you play to the Bloodforged Battle Axe.
It kind of like ups the clock by a lot.
Which is cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking the fact that it reduces equip cost, Skull Clamp,
Ew.
already a good card.
Yep.
But it equips for 0 now. So all you need to do is go, have some tokens, go Firion, Skull Clamp, equip, draw a 20.
And you're like,
which, of course, the first thing I would think of, but
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we'd take that. The other thing that equipment can leave behind is like counters.
Right.
Is the other thing I was thinking of. It's really cool with Power Fist. It's a equipped creature has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. And it equips for 2. So it makes that equip ability free, and it buffs the creature even if you sacrifice the equipment at the end of turn. So you just want to get some sort of value that is beyond like a temporary power boost, I think, if you're a Firion in your deck.
So I was thinking Sundial the Infinite is something to look at whenever there's an effect that says, sacrifice this at the end of your turn, and that would allow you to keep those tokens forever because you just end your turn. So I don't know if there are any equipment decks right now that would want to run Sundial for other reasons, but then all of a sudden Firion becomes a lot better. And then the other thing I was thinking is it is an enter the battlefield on the equipment, any non-token. So if you're in a deck that could blink equipment in some way,
interesting,
you can maybe get your extra tokens or whatever going on. It's just
Teleportation Circle blinks artifacts. So if you blink a living weapon one,
then all of a sudden
you get an extra token, and you get an extra
you
copy.
kind of created your own Bitter Blossom kind of deal
kind of fun.
going on. Yeah, so something to think about. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
This next one is very cool.
Yeah.
And the one that I have been thinking about a lot, and you have to do a lot of math as you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have more questions than answers, but here we go. It's Gogo, Master of Mimicry. It is a legendary creature wizard. It's a 2/4 for 2 and a blue, so 3 mana. It has an activated ability. It's XX and tap it. Copy target activated or triggered ability you control X times. You may choose new targets for the copies. This ability can't be copied, and X can't be 0. mana abilities can't be targeted.
Right.
So a lot of safety measures on this thing,
Yeah.
and the fact that you can't copy this ability is really smart because otherwise you could untap Gogo and then copy Gogo's own ability, which is copying all the abilities. Yeah. So it's activated or triggered too.
It's really open-ended.
It's super open-ended.
I was trying to find the other cards that like we've sort of put in this category, and it's typically split into these copy triggered abilities, these copy activated abilities. Normally it's like, okay, you got Strionic Resonators and your Roaming Thrones, and then over here is like Illusionist Bracers and Rings of Brighthearth.
Yep.
We have gotten a little bit more things that copy both, but it's usually pretty narrow in terms of what it can copy. Like the Peregrine Dynamo can copy activated or triggered abilities from a legendary source that isn't a commander, or like Lithoform Engine, which is very expensive to do this. So it is really interesting that we suddenly have this card that's like, okay, you can copy whatever you want, and if you have a lot of mana, you can do it a lot.
Yeah, it's 6 mana copies your activated trigger ability 3 times, which is very powerful, but also starts to get pretty confusing depending on what you're copying. So let's talk about some of the things you might want to copy.
Yeah, I mean, anything is the answer. Like, we're sort of, I was like, you could, first of all, look at your commander. If there's stuff that's worth copying on your commander, then obviously you can consider Gogo.
If your commander has an activated or triggered ability,
it probably does.
Then you might want Gogo, yep. It depends too, though, what those activated or triggers abilities are. Because remember, Gogo's pretty mana intensive. So whatever's happening, like if it's like your commander's has an activated ability, but it costs you a bunch of mana to activate the ability, well, what's the likelihood you've got mana left over to activate Gogo to copy that ability? So it's not going to be as good there. Or like, hey, it triggers when a creature's enter. Well, I got to cast the creature, which means how much mana do I have to have any left over for Gogo? So what you really want is like, might be like a combat trigger or something that costs you no mana, so now Gogo can copy it. Because you'll have mana sitting around because your trigger didn't cost you any mana, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me.
Planeswalkers were one you mentioned because they don't generally cost mana to do. They obviously cost mana the turn you play the Planeswalker, but so if a Super Friends deck might think about wanting to play a Gogo or something like that, it's something you can get out before the Planeswalkers are out.
And it blocks, right? It's
exactly. It's a 2/4, so it's got a bit of a butt, so it can, stifle some attacks against the Planeswalker. So I kind of like that.
One I thought of was Fetch Lands, which is pretty
sweet, actually. It's a ramp spell then.
Yes. So if you have a fetch land, you can crack the fetch land for no mana. And if you put 4 mana into Gogo, you copy your fetch land twice, which means you get the one you fetched for and then 2 additional lands.
It's a free explosive vegetations there. Even if you only do it once. It's 2 mana. It's just a rampant growth.
It's just a rampant growth on a blue
the hell
creature.
out of rampant growths. It's a Farseek or something.
In a landfall
Untapped.
deck, I do think it's like
it's 3
pretty
visits.
nuts. Yeah.
Wow, it's really good with fetch lands. I didn't even think about fetch lands. That's great. You can obviously do equipment. So Buster Sword. Do you want to copy that ability a few times? And
probably not the equip ability, the triggered ability.
The triggered ability, yeah. And you can spend as much mana as you want on that one because you're going to get to cast a bunch of spells for free after you draw a bunch of cards.
That seems sweet.
That seems really, really good. So as I was looking at this card, this is the type of card that I tend to like thinking about, and then I tend to build some sort of weird contraption deck that like does something crazy, and then I do that a couple times. And I'm like, okay, I'm done because it will get kind of combo-y pretty fast. And the way you would combo with this is you have to be copying an ability that untaps Gogo,
right?
And hopefully untaps a bunch of other things. And then if you had a bunch of mana dorks, now you are creating the mana to reactivate Gogo. And remember, Gogo's ability can't be copied, but you could just activate him again,
right?
So on the Planeswalker tip, I was thinking Gideon, Marshall, Paragon. His +2 is untap all creatures you control. Those creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn.
Interesting, sure.
Yeah, this becomes really good really fast as long as you've got a few mana dorks. Because you activate this, you Gogo that thing, let's say 3 times, right?
Sweet, yeah.
Then you let the first one resolve. They untap everything, but there's 3 more behind it. The original Gideon and the 2 more. You tap float the mana, let it resolve, tap float the mana. Now you go, there's still 1 on the stack, Gogo, copy the original Gideon, Marshall, Paragon thing, but now I'm copying it 9 times.
Right.
And then do that enough times that it's also giving the +1/+1, everything's huge. And and that just becomes like kind of a swing out and win right there.
This is the kind of card that, like, when you have it on the battlefield, you'll figure out what it does, because is like, you're like, it does enough that like it copies a lot, and I this turn it'll copy a fetch land, and this turn it'll copy my commander, or this turn it'll like you just find ways to use it.
Yeah.
If you're a permanent based deck, in particular, I think obviously if you're in spells or that kind of thing, there's fewer options to copy, but if you have any amount of permanence in the commander deck, you'll find ways to abuse this card in the moment, which I think is really interesting. Like, I put cards like this in decks all the time where I'm like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to use it in the moment, but I bet it'll do something.
I'll find a way, yeah.
And it'll make it for a different board state. It'll make for a different way to win in a way that, like, I didn't really predict now, but I'm sure will work out.
Yeah, I actually think it probably will be good in Spellslinger's decks too, because so many of them are Stormkiln Artists, Gutter Snipe based, which are triggers, right? So a lot of times you've got a bunch of mana. Can I turn that into win? Oh, sure. I'll just copy the Gutter Snipe ability like 12 times and that'll do it, or whatever. Yeah.
It says it can't copy mana abilities, but mana ability is sort of a weird specific term. So if you're copying a triggered ability that makes a treasure token, that's not a mana ability. If you're copying a fetch land, that is not a mana ability. Even if it's like related to mana.
It has to be adding mana to your mana pool to be a mana ability, yeah.
Basically, if you're looking for a triggered ability or the activated ability, you're looking for the colon. If you're looking for the triggered ability, you're looking for when or at. So
or
at
whenever,
the beginning or when or whenever. And that will give you an idea of things that are actually possible for you to copy.
You know, you could copy. You sack your jumbo cactus to an altered dimension.
No, mill 2 people, mill 3 people. Who knows? Yeah, I mean the options are endless with Gogo. It from what I know about this character, it makes sense that there's a lot of open-endedness about how you can actually
a lot of thinking,
about how you can actually use this card.
Yeah, you're gonna have to scheme for sure.
The next card I want to talk about is really powerful in the command zone. We didn't talk about it in any of our commander episodes, not yet anyway, but I did want to talk about it here because it goes in the 99 of a lot of things as well. And this is Lightning Army of 1. It's 1, a red and a white for a 3/2 human soldier with first strike, trample, and lifelink. She's legendary. And it has a stagger ability. Whenever lightning deals combat damage to a player until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. Here's the thing to copy with Gogo's ability.
Oh boy.
That is a trigger that you can absolutely copy.
Oh boy, yeah. Copy that twice, and it'd be 8 times
yeah.
damage. It's pretty good.
There's a lot of weird things to think about with lightning. First of all, it says until your next turn.
Right.
So that means you deal the damage now, you're doubling it on your turns, but you're also doubling it on all of your opponent's turns against the player that you hit with lightning. So if you hit one player with lightning, all damage dealt to them by any other player is also doubled, right? Whenever it deals together until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player, or any of their stuff.
They like mark them.
Yeah. So you say, there's your target, go.
Wow.
It is also has first strike.
Yeah, this is the interesting part.
So if you hit with lightning first, then it doubles the damage that will be dealt after that, which includes just regular combat damage. So
if you attack with lightning and say 3 other creatures that don't have first strike, lightning will hit, that ability will trigger and resolve, and then the other 3 creatures will hit, and they'll be dealing double damage.
Right.
That's cool.
It's pretty wild. Things get crazier with double strike.
Yeah.
So now you're setting up these delayed replacement effects, basically, where you hit, double the damage, so that resolves. Then you hit again, you double it again. That means that damage is now quadrupled.
Yeah, it's 4x.
In your second main phase.
Right.
So that means you can cast a lightning bolt, and it is now going to deal 12 damage.
Wow.
Your opponents can hit. It'll deal 4
red mana for 4 damage.
4 damage.
Right.
It only deals 1 to yours.
Oh, that's awesome with Pyrohemia.
It's really gross. And not to mention, lightning has lifelink, so the second time they hit, you gain 3, you double the damage, you hit again, you deal 6, you gain another 6. So you've dealt 9 damage and gained 9, and that's just from giving lightning double strike.
Wow. So going to be good with extra combat steps is what my brain immediately thinks.
Definitely good with extra combats. Definitely good with double strike. Any additional damage doublers just get crazy because now you're like the first time you hit, it's quadrupled. The second time you hit, it's octupled. Anyway, lightning bolt will be really good after that. You can copy.
It opens up wins with like Earthquake or something.
Yeah.
Those red spells that deal damage because usually they're symmetrical, so they kill you too. But because it only damages it against that person,
that
and
one player, yeah.
Yeah, yours will be like half or a fourth of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, copying the damage trigger does the same thing. Like you can really. Like, this card snowballs so much faster than it reads. It reads like, oh, I hit, I deal double damage against one player for one turn. But if you're an extra combat deck, if you're a double strike deck, if you're doubling combat damage triggers in any way, this thing is going to be bananas in the 99.
It does have to hit. It has trample, but it does have to deal combat damage, I think.
That's true.
So that's kind of one of the things. But it's got haste. It has all the pieces you would want.
It doesn't have haste.
Oh, it doesn't have haste.
First strike, trample, lifelink.
It's got every other ability, but not haste. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. I would think something with the word lightning would have haste.
She's tipped forward so much that it feels like she's haste energy. She looks like she's in a hurry.
All right, the next card is good because of the cards that are right next to it in our comparison.
Yeah.
It's Lock Treasure Hunter, which is 1 black-red for a 2/3 human rogue. Lock can't be blocked by creatures with greater power and has an ability called Mug, which is whenever Lock attacks, each player mills a card. If a land card was milled this way, create a treasure token. Until end of turn, you may cast a spell from among those cards. So the natural sort of first couple of cards that we compared it to are Regavan, Nimble Pilferer, and Professional Facebreaker, which are both very powerful cards that see a ton of play. So immediately it's like, well, Lock must be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at him and I was like, the more I thought about him, I was like, it does feel like Regavan if Regavan scaled for multiplayer. Because when you attack, you see 4 cards.
Right.
You only get to cast one of them.
Right.
But if you do mill a land, you get a treasure, which seems likely if you have 4 people milling a card.
Right.
It seems likely one person's going to hit a land. And then you get to cast one of the revealed cards. He has natural evasion, which isn't perfect evasion, but he doesn't have to deal combat damage. So as long as like they have a 2/3 or something to block, he still survives the combat.
Well, this form of evasion is difficult because, right, it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power.
Right.
So there's not anything that can really kill it because it's a 2/3. And if it could hit for 3, it can't block it.
It can't block it. That's true,
So
yeah.
your attacks are going to be safe like
They're pretty
99%
perfect.
of the time.
Unless they double block.
The double block is what you're worried
of
about.
course.
2 2/2s or 2 2/3s or something like that. But you don't attack that player. How often are you looking around the table and all 3 of your opponents have 2/2 power things?
Yeah,
Never. It just does. That's not something that really happens.
it's just, so you're like, okay, I see 4 cards and I get a ramp, and I get a treasure off of this.
Yeah.
It doesn't force you to use the treasure to cast the things because it doesn't fix your mana.
That's an interesting point. It doesn't say use mana or mana of any color or whatever when you cast the spells off your opponent's decks. So it does hopefully get you a treasure. Not guaranteed, but pretty good chance off 4 decks 1 land gets milled.
So yeah. I mean, if it doesn't take squinting that hard to look at that and see Regavan. You're like almost guaranteed a treasure, and you get to see like up to 3 other cards that you could cast.
Sure. I mean, 2 mana is a big differential. So
That's true.
Professional Facebreaker to me is the one that I'm thinking about,
Right.
sort of more in the vein, which obviously has different upside downside. Has menace. It triggers when your other creatures deal damage. You can get more than 1 treasure. You do have to sack treasures to kind of get the impulse draw, whereas this just kind of gives it. But I'd say Professional Facebreaker is probably better. But Professional Facebreaker is like borderline every red deck could run it, and it's it's one of those cards that's like, yep, that card's insane. So even just sort of looking even close to that is obviously pretty powerful. This card's just going to do a lot. It's going to ramp you. It's going to get you some extra card advantage, and it's going to reliably do that, and we'll be able to attack even later in the game. Like I can very easily imagine turn 6 you still can attack with it. They just don't have 2 things that can block it. And you're just still getting your treasure and still looking at extra cards. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing that
I want on my 3-drop.
In my head that like makes it a little bit better than Ragavan is Ragavan becomes impossible to attack with, like basically after turn 3, where it's like it's very good in the early game, but it eventually becomes dead. This is one of those cards that has the kind of evasion that can hit most of the game long and continue to give you that value. Like Professional Facebreaker, which has some evasion, but doesn't need the evasion itself to keep the engine rolling. Obviously, Locke has to attack to get this engine going, but I don't know. I think this card's pretty real, and the only reason we might not see a ton of it is because it's in 2 colors.
Yeah, that's the one thing another thing that's different than the other two. They're both mono red cards, so any red deck can run these, and Ragavan and Professional Facebreaker are pretty ubiquitous. Like most red decks, they just can run them. Like even if it's not on theme, it will do something for your deck, and just how many Rakdos decks or decks that have black-red in them exist, it's a lot less than decks that have red in them. So for that reason, we probably won't see it as much, but it is going to feel like those 2 cards. And I think,
yeah, it's definitely going.
If you
into
clear the bar of
decks.
like, well, what does it feel like? Professional Facebreaker. Oh, well, that card must be good.
That's pretty good. Yeah, it's definitely going in Ishin decks. That's the first thing I thought of. I do want to talk about this next one that's also in the Revival Trans Precon. We're kind of talking about a lot of cards in the Revival Trans Precon, if I'm honest. The next one is Shadow, Mysterious Assassin. It's 2 and a black for a 3/3 human assassin with Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice another non-land permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards and each opponent loses life equal to the mana value of the sacrificed permanent.
Mana value, so it's not the same as Fling, but yeah.
Right. So you can't... it's not
doesn't
great
work with Jumbo Cactus.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it's still 7.
It's still 7. That's lots.
Fine. That's not bad, yeah.
This is sort of an interesting card because I feel like it reads worse than it will feel on the battlefield. If you're in the kind of deck that is trying to sacrifice stuff, this is going to sacrifice one of your things, give you a dies trigger, draw 2 cards, and then maybe drain the table for some amount, 2 or 3. You can sacrifice anything you want. You can sacrifice artifacts. You can sacrifice creatures. You can sacrifice ETB stuff that you want to die anyway. Like, I just keep looking at this card and being like, yeah, it's actually... Like, this can burn the table out of nowhere in a way that, like, feels sneaky and interesting. Like...
Yeah, interesting. I don't fixate on the opponent losing life part because I think that's not going to do it out of nowhere because you need multiple attacks to hit for very much.
Yeah,
to me, turning something expendable into 2 cards.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Is very good, repeatable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any deck that's making treasure, clues, food, scrap. There's just a lot of little cardboard pieces sitting around now, and being able to turn that into 2 cards on a thing that's honestly annoying, right? It's a 3/3 Death Toucher for 3.
I don't want to block that.
Yeah, so you're going to have to trade something to stop that from happening, and you can usually find a player that you're pretty sure is just not going to be willing to turn off their game plan to stop you from drawing 2 cards. So this becomes a sort of draw engine that also, in a pinch, is a good defensive card.
Right.
And like you said, there will be that chance to maybe play something kind of large and get in damage where people didn't see. You might be able to work with somebody. Hey, guess what? We need to deal damage to this player over there. You let me do this, I'll sacrifice the 7-drop. Maybe that finishes them off or gets them within range for you to kill thing. And also, you just don't talk about the upside of like, oh, also just draw 2 cards there.
Yeah, and I'll reanimate the 7-drop I just sacrificed.
Yeah. So there's a lot of scenarios where I think it's good. It's just a card that's like floor is very low.
Right.
But I think your deck has to meet the bar of like, does it have stuff around, most of the time that's expendable?
Right.
Yeah.
I think most of the time you're sacrificing scrap and you're sacrificing little things around. But I think the drain is an easy thing to forget, and I think it's an easy thing for your opponents to forget, where you're like, oh, okay, well, I took 2 from it this turn because they sacrificed, some little artifact thing, and next turn, I took another 5 from that, and I've taken 7 now from this little thing, not to mention the combat damage.
Right.
It's going to be an annoying little threat that does eventually have to get dealt with, and it's monocolored and is very defensive. So I think this card is quite good and is going to see... If it doesn't see play, it's going to be sort of a Yahenni problem where people are like, I forgot how good that card was. Every time I have a Yahenni in play, that card's still really good.
That card just is good, yeah. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
The next card is called Snort. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery. It's a wheel variant. It says each player may discard their hand and draw 5 cards. Then Snort deals 5 damage to each opponent who discarded their hand this way. Also has flashback for 5 and a red, so you can cast it from your graveyard for paying that cost and then exile it. So you can kind of get 2 mini wheels.
Yeah, most of it, medium wheels. They're not full mini wheels.
Well, okay.
It's less
Do
than
mini
7.
wheels exist?
Yeah.
Is there something smaller than this that I don't know about?
Yeah, there's like discard your hand, draw 3.
Draw 3? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
This
This is the medium. There's a small, medium, or large, and then there's a super big gulp, but I'll just take the medium.
Thank you.
It's too much sugar.
I don't need that today. So I wanted to talk about this card. They printed something similar to this very recently. They printed the Will of the Jeskai, which is also
so
4
recent
mana.
I basically haven't been able to see it get played yet.
So it's another 4 mana, discard your hand, draw 5. So it does feel like this is a new thing that they're thinking about in terms of how to print wheels that don't feel wildly busted, but are still playable. And I wanted to talk about is it what do we think about that? Is 5 cards enough for 4 mana? For me, in many decks, in Spellslinger decks that are trying to dump their hands, it is. But it is 1 more mana than would you play this over a Wheel of Misfortune is an interesting question.
No, I think absolutely not. Yeah. In general, just the ability to get 7 is just
it's just 2 more.
2
cards.
more for less mana too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. 4 mana. I don't understand why it's 4 mana. The Will of the Jeskai has 2 abilities. Yeah. This one only has 1. I get that it does the 5 damage, but you're not going to play this for the damage. The damage is a nice to have, but what you're playing this for is the wheel part. And to me, it's okay, it's giving me less cards for more mana than, we just Windfall and those things are 3 mana. So I think that's kind of the downside. Now it gives you the flashback.
Yeah.
As kind of a rebate on hey.
7's a lot though.
Yeah. So it's 6, 5 and
Oh, 6, excuse me.
5 and red. Yeah. I would think what if the flashback was also 4? Then all of a sudden that becomes interesting.
Then it's quite good.
Yeah. But I still don't think broken. But anyway, yeah. To me, I think it's cool and it's interesting. They're turning the knobs to try and find a place. And one of the things I like about sort of new wheels is the May part of it.
It's the option, right?
Yeah. So even Wheel of Misfortune has this aspect of you kind of don't have to wheel if you don't want to. So I kind of like that part, but that also has downsides because in decks that want wheels, sometimes you want wheels for different reasons.
Right.
Sometimes you want your opponents to be drawing the cards because they'll take damage, or you want them to be discarding because you'll get kind of triggers or access to their graveyard or whatever. Sometimes you want to be drawing the cards or you want to be discarding. And depending on which of those 4 things are more important to you, this becomes kind of better or worse. And that's kind of how I would evaluate it. Yeah,
it's interesting because there is definitely moments where you're like, man, I have to cast this wheel and I know it's going to reload my opponent's hands, which I don't really want to do, but I need cards.
I got nothing going on, yeah.
So I have to slam it. And so this sort of puts your opponents in a little bit more of a bind where it's okay, is my hand worth 5 damage? And it's only 5 cards. So I feel less of the time your opponents are going to wheel if you cast Snort. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they get less cards.
They get fewer cards and they have to take damage if they get it. So there is less of that downside of regular wheels where you're well, I'm going to cast this Windfall and it's going to give me a lot of cards, but it's also going to give them a lot of cards. But it's not a lot because it's 5. So it's a very difficult card to evaluate. I'm sort of curious about it in a Dragon's Approach style deck, which is the damage is upside.
Yeah.
But it is more expensive and gives you fewer cards. And my Dragon's Approach is already running, Windfall and Wheel of Misfortune already. So
yeah, I mean, are you going to put Snort in that deck?
I
don't think I would.
I don't know if there's a cut for it. It does feel like for me who already has some of the better versions of that card, it's not going to bump them out. And I don't really want 4 or 5 wheels in the deck. So it's an interesting card. I think 4 mana for 5 cards is not quite enough. And I wish they would just print a card that was 3 mana. Each player may discard their hand, draw 7 cards. I just give us Wheel of Fortune that doesn't force them to wheel. And I know that's too good. I know it is. But we can still play Wheel of Fortune and nobody can afford it. So it's very frustrating.
The problem is when you print that card, the people that are already playing Wheel of Fortune also get that card.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, it does, I think, help the environment a little bit because you having 1 and me having 2 is a lot better for you than you having 0 and me having 1.
Right.
But I get what they're doing is being careful with wheels because we had this time period and wheels become like oppressively good the higher density you can have of them.
Yeah.
So I think you have to kind of make them less efficient. Otherwise, you're just going to have so many wheel decks in the format. And we saw that for a moment.
Yeah, but if you lose the forcing thing, then you lose a lot of the toxic patterns that came with wheel decks.
Maybe the May does it.
Yeah. I mean,
helps it enough.
It makes it like not as good with Hull Breacher type of effects and like Narsets and that kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't know. It's I don't think Snort's quite there. I think it's fun, but tough.
All right. The next one is our first summon card.
Yeah, we've got a couple of these to talk about. This is the big bad of which Final Fantasy is this? 10. And it is appropriately costed to be the big bad.
Yeah, it's 9 colorless mana for Summon Bahamut. It's got its first 2 chapters are the same, which is destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Oh, I should say it's a 9/9 with flying.
Yes.
That's important.
It huge.
Yeah, it's a Saga Dragon. First 2 chapters, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Chapter 3 is draw 2 cards. And then it does have a 4th chapter, which is called Mana Flare. This creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. And then it will, of course, have to be sacrificed. Right. And it's other creatures, so they didn't have to have you ask the question of, does this 9 count towards the damage? No, it does not.
It does not.
Yeah.
It is gone. Yeah. I mean, this is a big old thing, and it will end the game if you get to chapter 4.
Yep. Probably will deal a lot because you had 9 mana when you cast this and you're 4 turns later. I mean, obviously, barring any crazy like counter manipulation stuff. And counter manipulation is going to be quite good with this because adding 1 and taking 1 off will destroy a lot of stuff, draw a bunch of cards. And if you can stay between 2 and 3 there and just kind of bounce back and forth, this is repeatable removal and whatever. It's going to be good, but you had to get it out there somehow.
Right. This is a very fancy meteor golem. Is like sort of what it looks like to me.
Yeah. And meteor golem is playable. We see it a lot. It's good, but it's 2 less mana. So the question is the upside here?
And it's an artifact, which makes it easier to get into play with this kind of stuff.
Easier to recur, just kind of better in every way.
Yeah. It's a very fancy meteor golem. I like that it's a dragon. That makes it sort of more, that it makes it considered for those decks.
Right.
Like there's a lot of ways to reduce the casting cost on dragons. There's a lot of great typal strategies that make dragons better, copy them, give them haste, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think barring a dragon strategy or something that can like make this effectively free, like Rakdos Lord of Riots or Animar or something that does a reduction.
There is this whole class of deck that's like, we'll give you a bunch of colorless mana, and they tend to run a handful of like 8 to 12 mana.
Right.
Fully colorless things. So usually the Eldrazi are in there. Yeah. That to me was what I was thinking about. Does this replace the 9 mana slot in a deck like that, like your Rakdos deck, a Belby deck, my Megatron deck? And I was looking at like what are the common cards we put at sort of 9 mana.
Right.
Portal to Phyrexia is one of them.
Yeah.
Which I think is just clearly a lot better than Bahamut, just because it does all its stuff kind of
right away.
Yeah.
Well, and it has the reanimator effect on the next
Void
one.
Winnower is a one that's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit, and Bahamut, they do different things, but I think I'd prefer a Void Winnower most of the time, but it's not like clearly way a million times better.
Right.
Artisan of Kozilek is another one at 9 mana that kind of fits that bill. It reanimates something, is just kind of big and annihilatory.
Yeah.
Again, feels a different slightly role, but
I don't play a ton of Artisan of Kozilek anymore.
And then Phyrexian Triniform was another one that still sees play, and this is usually getting reanimated and usually is going in like an artifact reanimation style deck, so you're not casting it, you're planning
You're looping it with Goblin Welders and that kind of thing.
Which Bahamut does not give you the ability to do.
Right.
I don't know. That was just, I was looking at those cards because this is a similar casting cost and seeing how it lined up, and there's spots for it.
There's definitely a world where this gets into a deck.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the best colorless threat. I think assuming it is more affordable than the Eldrazi's, then it could be a more budget option than the like super top end of those
like
colorless
Ulamogs
decks.
And Kozileks,
Ulamogs and Kozileks, which are all like 20-ish plus.
Yeah.
Assuming Bahamut is less than that, I do think that this could be a very real like option in those types of decks, especially in like an Animar or like Rakdos. You often run out of cards, so having something that like even eventually will draw me 2 cards is an upside on a threat.
Interesting.
Like, I think Kozilek is one of the better Eldrazi's in that deck because it draws you a couple of cards right away. And this is a threat that will eventually do that, but 3 turns is a long time in a deck that is trying to power out big things like that. So it's at kind of a weird spot.
I wonder if it could be top end and then like a blink deck as well, because
Sure.
you can blink the Saga, get that chapter 1 again. You can't do that to Ulamog because they're cast triggers.
Right.
So they don't tend to go in the blink decks. But
That's true.
The ability to blink or even like destroy something, next turn destroy something, blink it, get it on the... I mean, that's a lot of removal. If you're removing something every single turn, it's... you will win a lot of games where you're casting it for your removal spell every turn. So
It's a better reanimator target than any of the Eldrazi's as well, because
'cause
you
they don't
get
sit
the
in your-
ability, you don't get the cast trigger.
yeah, they don't sit in your graveyard. A lot of them have abilities that make it so they're not there. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool top end. It's interesting, and I like that they found a design space. It doesn't feel clearly... Portal Phyrexia is like too good. We see it too much.
Right.
So I like this. It like sits a little below that, but I think we'll see it. It'll just be one of the ones that's in the mix of that. Like, oh yeah, you got a lot of mana. Something scary is coming out. Oh, it's that. Yep. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. It's worth 9 mana.
Yeah.
Is sort of what it feels like. I like it. Top end as an Enchantress deck is kind of interesting. Like one that's a less stormy Enchantress deck and wants to like stick a big scary haymaker. That is another place.
I like anything that gives an Enchantress deck the ability to do
con?
anything.
Great.
Yeah, it's just like, what do you? Yeah, but how do we die? Okay,
that'll kill us.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly. I just
So glad to
thank
hear
God
it.
you played that.
That's exactly how I feel. Speaking of a win con for Enchantress decks, this one's a little dirtier, but it is definitely good. It's Summon the Good King Mog the 12th.
Yep.
4 and a white for a 4/4 flying lifelink. So 5 mana for a 4/4 flying lifelink. This is Saga Moogle. The first chapter is create 2 1/2 white Moogle creature tokens with lifelink.
Are they 1/2s because he's Mog the 12th?
Interesting.
Probably.
Interesting. I didn't see the connection, but I like it. That's my assumption. So you make 2. The second and third chapter says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, create a token that's a copy of a non-saga token you control. Could be a Moogle, could be anything.
Could even be a boat.
Not a saga, though.
Yeah.
So you do that for the second and third turns, you have this in play. And then the fourth chapter is put 2 +1/+1 counters on each other Moogle you control. So it does behoove you to make a lot of Moogles in the first or the second and third chapters.
Yeah, it incentivizes that because they are all going to get bigger if this saga gets to chapter 4.
Right. And in the meantime, it's a 4/4 flying lifelink that is kind of a beater.
It's a 4/4 flying lifelink that comes with 2 1/2 lifelinkers.
Yeah.
For 5 mana.
It's pretty absurd in terms of just a threat the turn it comes down. In a blink deck, this is messed up.
It's pretty aggressively costed.
I agree.
Yeah, that's just, you get a lot for your mana here. Yeah, if it's blink deck, or white is also in one of the colors that's the best at manipulating counters. So I think a pretty good chance this is going in decks that can remove some lower counters or add them at certain times. So I don't you kind of know this goes in like tokeny decks, right? Decks
that
that
makes
are
sense.
gonna have an Annoying Procession or something out to make this even better, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Or it goes in counter manipulation decks, which also often have a token component to them.
Right.
Because you need stuff to put counters on.
That definitely makes sense. I was looking at it in terms of the second and third abilities. So you're trying to cast a lot of non-creature spells in one turn.
You can put this in a Stormy type deck.
Yeah, like
That's
it's.
cool.
I mean, this is a very fancy Monastery Mentor that is a little bit easier to track and has lifelink all over the place.
Yeah.
I like it in sort of the as a top end in an Enchantress deck that just gives you a bunch of power all at once, because it kind of has that. First of all, it's an enchantment, which is nice.
Yep.
But it has that ability to be a threat all in one little container. So even if you cast 1 or 2 enchantments the turn that you have it, you have 4 Moogles. And then the next turn you make 2 more, you have 6 Moogles. And suddenly you have, 6 3/4s with lifelink.
Yeah. Yeah, it could actually also go in like Aristocrats decks too, as I'm thinking about it, because
Just a ton of bodies.
just creates a bunch of bodies. You often have a little bit of life gain synergy in Aristocrats decks, just because when black and white combine, they often have a couple of just random, like, if you gain life, do this too. Okay. And yeah, this feels like it just will be a solid card. It just puts so much out there. It's 3 bodies. They all got lifelink. The lifelink is I think lifelink and life gain is sort of better than it's ever been because games are quicker now. So often just buying yourself a little bit of time is what you need to do. Where like, hey, if I can just live an extra turn, now I can be the one that does the big thing because I can survive theirs or whatever. So it feels like it's just going to have... This felt narrow to me when I first read it, and the more I thought about it, I was like, I think it's actually a little more broad. I think it will just go in a lot more decks than I thought. Because now we're talking about token decks, counter manipulation decks, maybe aristocrats decks. It's already blink decks. So now that's just a lot of decks.
That's a lot of decks, and like not to mention, like you could put it in some kind of stormy deck. I think it's a little too expensive. I think we've got cheaper things that do this roughly in like a Spellslinger deck. But in terms of an enchantment deck that's trying to cast a lot of enchantments and use enchantresses to kind of draw a ton of cards, like it just does a lot on this weird little saga. So summon saga. So Good King Mog the 12th is a good king indeed.
Long live.
I think don't underestimate his cute face.
It's just a very efficient card. The rate is just very good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, the next one is also a summon. I guess all the summons were going to come in a row because we're doing it alphabetically and their name is Summon : something.
Yeah.
Summon the Mega Sisters. It is 4 and a green for a 5/5 with haste, Saga Fairy. It has 3 chapters, but they're all the same. It's choose one of these at random. You can either put 3 1/1 counters on target creature, or put a shield counter on target creature and gain 3 life, or this creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. So every time you put a lore counter on this, you would roll a 6-sided dice probably and say, the first one is 1 and 2, the second one's 3 and 4, the third one's 5 and 6. You don't get to choose which one it's doing. It is determined at random. All the things we said about the sagas as far as counter manipulation and everything go for this one.
Yeah. This one, I keep thinking about this card because it looks like it should be bad. Like it just says, you're like, it doesn't have any natural evasion. You're choosing stuff at random. It's 5 mana. But then you're like, I don't know, it's a 5 mana 5/5 with haste that can, like, on statistical average, make something 3 counters bigger, protect another creature, and kill something. That's a lot. That's a lot of things on one card. And obviously, I like that it's a threat at 5 mana that comes down and attacks right away in green that has more words on it. It's random is less bad when all the abilities are pretty good, is I guess where I landed on it. I don't know if it's like the best card in Final Fantasy, but I do think that this is one of those cards that like somebody's going to play it across from you. It's going to beat the snot out of your board and you'll be like, what was that? What was that stupid card?
I will say the randomness aids it in some ways, right? Because if it just, you knew the removal was coming or whatever, you might have to kill it, but you don't know. You have this chance that it won't do that and it'll do one of the other things or whatever.
Right.
And I think the removal is the one that players are going to be the most scared of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that you just don't know what it could do makes it inherently a little less scary because you can always talk yourself into, well, what if it does the shield counter thing? I don't care about that. Yeah, exactly. Myself, personally, this is not the type of card that I like or will ever play because I like to know what my cards are going to do.
Right.
And this card, I don't know what it's going to do. And the things are different enough. Like, do I want to make a creature big? Do I want to protect a creature? Do I want to remove a creature? Well, yeah, I might want to do all of those things, but I usually don't want to do any of those 3 things. I want to do one of those specific things. So to me, I don't think I would probably run this unless I am in a deck that can manipulate counters, because then it's like, I'm going to do that 3 times and statistically I'll get the fight spell in there and grow this thing along the way. And if I don't, it's like so much is happening that that's what I'm doing. I'm just like shield countering it and putting 6 counters on it or whatever, or something else. And this goes in the counter blitz precon, so it makes sense. It is in a counter manipulation deck. And I just like it as I have specific curves that I'm looking for in decks, and a lot of the time you're like, I'm looking for 5 mana creatures that have haste, or I'm looking for like 5 mana 5/5s, and it just feels like it's going to check a lot of boxes and show up more than I think it will. So I don't underestimate this card. I don't think it's like super busted or anything, but this may be a role player in stompy decks or in just anything that's trying to beat face quickly. Okay. Let's move on to Tataru Taru.
This is a Dwarf Advisor. It's a 0/3 for 1 and a white. When Tataru Taru enters, you draw a card and target opponent may draw a card. It has a second ability that says whenever an opponent draws a card, if it isn't that player's turn, create a tapped treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, if your opponent draws any extra cards on not their turns, you get at least one tapped treasure token.
Yep. So you're going to get one when this enters, right?
You're going to get that one when this enters.
Right.
So it's 2 mana. You draw a card, I draw a card. It cantrips,
and I make a treasure.
and you make a treasure.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. And then obviously it's very good in a meta that plays Rhystic Study type effects or that plays Mystic Remora type effects, because that means you're going to be able to trigger this more consistently. But it may not be good in playgroups that are a little bit more like Guardian Project or Phyrexian Arena focused. It's a weird card to evaluate.
We know that players draw extra cards a lot. The question is, do they draw extra cards not on their turn?
Yeah.
And that's a little bit harder to figure out. There are a lot of cards that kind of do it, though, that see a lot of play. And I think, as you said, you have to sort of know your meta a little bit. But Ledger Shredder, Fairy Mastermind, Esper Sentinel, Trouble in Pairs, Mangara, obviously Rhystic and Mystic. There's also, I was trying to figure out like how many like blue Cantripy cards like Brainstorm, Frantic Search, Opt get played. There's not as many as you would think. You can also affect it by like if you've got wheels in your own deck, so you're going to make or give people the opportunity to draw cards not on your turn. Yeah, it's... I don't know. I think the answer is like you kind of got to know your meta to determine like if you're gonna get, because I don't think I probably play this just at face value. I have to be able to realistically, hopefully, most games get another treasure or two out of it. Probably more than that to really make it worth playing. I probably want to be able to blink it or something. Right?
Yeah, you probably want like 2 or 3 treasures out of this to feel like, okay, it has done what I need it to do.
Yeah, if you play this, nothing else happens. You obviously get a card, your opponent gets a card. You get that one treasure off that first thing. How many more treasure do you need to get from that point to be like, I was happy with this card. It deserves a spot in my deck.
I think 2 or 3 more treasures by like inside of 2 turns. You know what I mean? Like there's a clock on it. You can't be like 2 or 3 more treasures in the game. But it's like the weird thing about it is it doesn't start really working until people are set up, but it's a 2 mana thing. So like you play it, you get a treasure, you get a card.
On turn 2, it seems unlikely they're going to be drawing cards not on their turn. Yep.
So there's like, unless there's an Esper Sentinel, which in that case, Tataru Taru is going to feel really good.
Yep.
But if there isn't, then you're like, okay, I could go at least 2 turns from here and not make any additional treasures from this.
I mean, if there's an Esper Sentinel or Rhystic Study, you probably won't get treasures because it's additional incentive for them to pay or not cast something.
Sure.
Right? Like, usually it's pretty close. They don't want to, but they'll cast something to keep up with the table and let one person draw a card. But if they're also, and then this is also going to happen, maybe I make different plays now where I wouldn't have otherwise.
I don't know. Did you see the last episode of Extra Shorts? I don't think one person paid for Esper Sentinel.
Maybe not.
Under
Again,
any
it's your meta, I suppose.
Yeah, this is a real meta card. I think if you're in a very high power meta that's playing a lot of these powerful draw engines that we're talking about, then Tataru Taru is going to be more reliable. And if you're in a lower power, sort of less consistent draw engine one where people are going to cast sorceries that draw a lot of cards, Tataru Taru is not going to do much for you. But only you can really make that decision for yourself.
I mean, yeah, the only question I had was blink decks. Is it good enough in blink decks?
You draw, so it's like a wall of omens that makes a treasure, draws a card, and gives a card to an opponent. Yeah. Is like sort of the...
Yeah, or what's the Spirited Companion is another one that people play. I think there's a lot of upside because there's a lot of upside also to just giving a player a card because somebody who's behind or in second place, so you can often make deals like, hey, listen, I'll offer this to anybody. I have to give somebody a card. The first one to speak up and just say, I have immunity from your next turn or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, so...
I think in blink decks, this can do enough for you.
Okay. The next one is
A
called...
set of 5, actually.
Oh, yeah. This is the crystal cycle.
This is another cycle. We're going to talk about these sort of all as a chunk, kind of, because they're very similar.
So we'll put some on screen now. There's one for each color. There's the wind crystal, the water crystal, the earth crystal, the darkness crystal, and the fire crystal. So they're monocolored. They all cost 2 and then color. So 2 white, 2 blue, 2 green. You get it. They all say spells you cast of that color cost 1 less to cast. So the red one makes red spells 1 less to cast. Then they all have a static ability and an activated ability.
Right.
Okay, so the white one says if you would gain life, you gain twice that life instead, and then says the activated, that's the static ability. And then it says 4 white, and tap it, and creatures you control gain flying and lifelink until end of turn. So
and when it hits, you'll gain twice that amount of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it combines with the static ability. Yeah, a lot of the static abilities sort of work with the activated abilities, which is nice. I will say a lot of these static and activated abilities are pretty narrow.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're looking at the Wind Crystal, you're like, okay, obviously in a life gain deck, this is an effect that we have played before, the doubling the life. And the activated ability is quite strong. I'm not sure. It is expensive, so I don't know if the activated ability alone would be worth it for me to put in a deck, because it's 4 mana to cast this, 6 mana to tap it and give all my stuff flying and lifelink. That's very powerful, but that's also a total of 10 mana that I've done to do that. Not to mention actually getting a board to make that matter.
Yeah. I mean, it does have that medallion effect of reducing the cost
save you
of
some.
How much is that worth to you? Obviously worth more if it's a mono white deck than it is if it's a 3-color deck. There's a lot on here and a lot going on, so they are kind of hard to weigh. To me, the Wind Crystal specifically, if you're not a life gain deck, you probably don't run it.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about the blue one, which has the static ability of if an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill that many cards plus 4
That's
instead.
a ton.
Yep.
Plus 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then its activated ability is 4 blue, and I should say all the activated abilities are 4 color, tap it. So 4 blue, each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand.
Plus 4.
In your hand. Plus 4 because it's the static ability.
Right,
so you have 7 cards, each opponent mills 11.
I mean, in a mill deck, that's a very powerful effect. If you're in mono blue, mill. If you're in heavy blue, mill. And if you're not, then you're not going to run this card.
Yeah, it's kind of like the white one. It's life gain or bust. And this one is really only mill. I guess... Yeah, probably only mill because it doesn't affect yourself, right? It's only opponents. And even if you're playing around with your opponent's graveyards, you probably aren't milling enough to make the static ability worth it.
Right.
So,
and you certainly don't want to spend your entire turn paying 6 and having them mill 11. Like, that's good, but it doesn't actually do anything for you right now.
Unless you are a dedicated mill deck that's trying to make it so people have no cards in libraries.
Right.
All right, the green one, the Earth Crystal, it says its static ability is if 1 or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many counters are put on that creature instead. And then its activated ability, 4 green, and tap it. Distribute 2 1/1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control, which would actually be 4 1/1 counters.
6 mana for 4 counters is a steep cost on this activated ability, but the static ability,
so good, yeah.
The static ability is very powerful.
Yeah.
I think this is probably, I don't know, the blue one's very raw powerful in mill as well. It's a very powerful effect in a very powerful strategy, being +1/+1 counters decks.
Yeah,
Will you play it outside of that? No.
There are way more +1/+1 counter decks than there are mill decks.
Yes.
So the green one, I think, feels like we'll see it a lot more, and maybe the most of all 5 of them, because I don't know, like everybody it feels like has at least one +1/+1 counter deck, and this is pretty good in the deck. Reduce the cost of a bunch of your spells and double the counters. Like that feels worth it right there, and the activated ability is just gravy.
Yeah. The mana sink.
The black one is the Darkness Crystal. Its static is if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile it and you gain 2 life.
Okay.
And then its activated ability, 4 black, and tap it. Put target creature card exiled with the Darkness Crystal onto the battlefield, tapped under your control with 2 additional 1/1 counters on it. So something has to die, get exiled by it instead of going to the graveyard. And until that happens, you can't even activate the big ability.
This is the only one where the activated ability doesn't work unless the static ability has.
Yeah.
Which is a little annoying, and I think it makes it pretty significantly worse. Also, the fact that this only stops the die's abilities of non-token creatures, I think makes it worse as a hate piece. Like, if you're trying to actually play this to be like, I'm going to turn off aristocrat decks.
Yeah, they can still
sacrifice tokens, which is what they're doing already.
A lot of times, but it stops like Gravecrawler type shenanigans and things like that. I also think like it's not super high bar to clear to like, hey, creatures are going to die, because a lot of black decks are like pretty edict heavy, or I think if you're an edict heavy or a wrath heavy black deck, like this in a Toxic Deluge is pretty great.
Yeah.
This activated ability could be the best of the bunch as far as like if you do something like that, and then it's like, yeah, I'll pay 6 mana to get something really good.
Sure.
Out of it, I'm gonna get your jumbo cactus out with 2 counters, which will definitely matter.
Yeah, 10,002.
Yeah, and the ability on this is instant speed. It's not sorcery only.
That's true.
So that's actually pretty powerful, because what you get to do is hold it open with your removal and your other things, and say, "Oh, nothing happened. End step before my turn. This creature's coming out now. My jumbo cactus is on your end step, and it's getting an attack right away."
This is interesting. I think it definitely only goes in sort of a controlling black shell. Like if you're running a lot of targeted removal, or you're running a lot of wraths, or you're running a lot of edict effects, your plan is to kill creatures, then you start looking at the darkness crystal.
It becomes very good, because in those decks, a lot of times your problem is like, I can remove everything, but what the hell am I going to kill them with?
Right.
And this says, oh, just kill them with the stuff you killed of theirs.
Yeah.
I'll give you the tool you need. Yeah.
It turns the plan. It turns the plan, which is control, into a win con. So in those, I think those are pretty specific decks.
Again, yeah, probably a little. Probably there's about as many of those as there are mill decks, or maybe even less.
Yeah, and we're talking about it's going to have to be pretty heavily black, because it's black spells you cost 1 less to cast, and the worse you make that reduction ability, the worse the card gets.
The good news is that static ability is graveyard hate, and will just randomly hose some decks.
It will.
They'll just be like, I can't win with that thing. I just can't win with that thing on the battlefield.
Yep.
Yeah. The last one is the Fire Crystal. It is static ability is creatures you control have haste.
Great.
Big surprise there. And then it's activated as 4 red, tap, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step.
Okay.
I mean, the bar here is really low. Yeah. Just have creatures.
Creatures, give them haste. That's a good ability. It reduces your red. That's also good. It's pretty expensive to make a token copy, but it's something that you can do repeatedly. And, you're in red. You run out of cards pretty easily. You got a thing in play. I could see activating this ability. It feels like the most generically playable one, the Fire Crystal, but it also doesn't seem like the most powerful.
Yeah, because usually for something that grants our stuff haste, we don't want to pay 4 mana.
4's a lot.
That's too. Yeah, it feels like too much, even with the reduction and everything. So, and the fact that like I already have to have something good in order for the second thing to even work. And if I've got something good, why do I need it? I'll just swing with the good thing. It reads generic, but I think we won't end up seeing it that much. There's just better options.
Yeah, I agree. It's fighting in a very competitive slot. For like all of these abilities, you're like, yeah, these words are right, but there's just a little bit too much mana commitment, especially in a red deck. Okay, those are the crystals. I think like 4 mana to have a cost reducer on the board in any color is just kind of too expensive. So you're really looking at that static ability is going to be the primary definer of if this is going to make the cut in your deck.
Yeah. Yeah, you put a note down, which I agree with a lot, which is like, I want my cost reducers out early.
Yeah.
Because I want to reduce the cost of the stuff that I'm doing earlier.
Right.
And later they just do less kind of good because I'm already kind of set up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. We're moving on to another mana rock. It's time to play our favorite game show.
Is this 3 mana rock good enough?
It might be. I don't know. It's the Warring Triad. Could also be a mana dork. This is a 3 mana legendary artifact creature, God. It's a 5/5 with flying, trample, and haste. As long as there are fewer than 8 cards in your graveyard, the Warring Triad isn't a creature, and then it has an ability, tap, mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color.
I like that they had to give it haste just in case it comes in as a creature, but you do want to use it for mana.
Right. It's a very interesting card that I am kind of having trouble evaluating because there's a lot of things that are good about it, and there's a lot of things that you're like, And And the first thing I thought about is like Millikins and Deranged Assistants, which are other mana creatures that tap to mill a card and give you mana. This one is one more expensive than both of those, but it is also a 5/5 with flying, trample, and haste for 3 mana.
Yeah, after you get 8 cards in your graveyard at a minimum.
Which isn't a huge amount in decks that are already really focusing on the mill plan. Like if you're running Millikin, you're running Deranged Assistant, you are actively working on fueling your graveyard.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance you run this unless your deck already wants some amount of self-mill.
Right.
So you would not just run it in a deck doesn't have any other cards that say put things in your graveyard.
Right.
So yeah, and there's a lot of decks that want to self-mill. We talk about them all the time, so that's not a small category.
Right. So it's like this 3 mana rock on the early game, which is fine. It's a little slower than we like normally. That has additional upside that mills you a card. So that's like a fine card, I think. And then if you draw it in the late game, and by late game I mean you just already have your mill set up, it's a beater. It's a 5/5 that comes in with haste and flying. This will smack somebody, and it's like this weird combination of like, those are all like potentially very good things. Where are they all good enough?
Yeah, it's funny because the dichotomy between you and me is so different, right? Like you see these 5/5s, this 5/5 with haste, this 5/5 with flying, and you're like 5. I
kill people with it.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, she does. I've died to her many times doing that. I'm not saying she's wrong.
Yeah,
there different players just look at cards in different ways. To me, I'm like, I don't care that much about a 5/5 flyer. I mean, that is a good rate, right? If you get a 3 mana 5/5 flying, haste, trample, I think you would play that card most of the time. Yeah, you put something down on the paper, which I think is right, which is this is like worse early and better later, right? Because the early game cards you're comparing it to, Millikin and Deranged Assistant, it's worse than those cards because it costs 1 more mana to do what they're doing. But it's good late in that once you have 8 cards into your graveyard, paying 3 mana for a 5/5 flying trample haste is way under rate and a good card. And I was just thinking about where Commander's at and how games progress, and I don't really want a card that's worse early and better late.
Sure.
Because early game matters so much more than late game these days. In that there are a lot of ways to end games. It doesn't feel that hard to end games. Games end faster now than they ever have. And so the biggest way that I feel like I lose games is I just get off to a slower start or I just don't get going. And I feel like I play a lot of games these days where like my deck just didn't have like a really smooth start and I never quite got to the point where it was really churning and somebody else did and they won.
Yeah.
And maybe there was interplay and we tried to stop things and it wasn't the first player that did whatever. It's not like it wasn't fun or whatever, but like significant amount of games where it's like I just never quite got going. And that's what I'm mostly trying to do is just get going. And then once I'm there, I feel like my deck is going to figure out ways once it's going to kill my opponents. And so I don't really need a card that's like, hey, I won't help you get going and I'll actually be kind of worse at that. But once you're going, I'm good. I don't really need it.
What I like about this card is it does this overlap thing very well, where it's like this is a ramp card, this is a self-mill card, this is also a win con in terms of it just hitting people. So it does check a lot of boxes for the decks that it wants to go in. And I agree, like when I'm putting ramp into my deck, I'm usually very intentional about what turn I want that ramp down. Usually on turn 2 to get like a 4 mana commander into play, or I'm casting something on turn 1 to get a 3 mana commander into play, or I'm not running ramp for the most part. Like maybe I'm running 3 mana ramp to get a 5 mana commander into play, but that's not usually.
But 2 mana ramp still does that.
Yeah. I that would normally be like I play a setup thing on turn 2. Like I play a creature that can wear equipment and then I ramp on 3. Like there's something else I want to do on turn 2, so my ramp adjusts.
Well, 2 mana ramp's still better in that case because on 3 you cast a 2 mana card, then another 2 mana card.
Right. But I like in the decks that I'm doing that, it's usually because the upside on the 3 mana ramp is worth it because my density of ramp isn't necessary. So I'd rather have a card that does more for me on turn 3 than I want a signet on turn 2 that doesn't do anything for me in the late game. So I do have decks where I've adjusted where I actually do want higher value ramp because I want higher quality cards overall and fewer just dead zones. Where talismans are often in the late game, where you have a handful of cards and you're like, this doesn't do anything. Millikin in particular doesn't do anything if you draw it on turn 5. You're like, this is a 2 mana 0/1 that is never going to tap. So I do actually like that this is a high quality ramp card that is going to check a lot of boxes, is going to feel like you're like, oh, I desperately need more cards in my library. I drew that. Or I want access to like a blocker. Great, it does that. Or I in the late game, I need, some amount of mana. Obviously, it's not going to give you more mana until your next turn, but in the meantime, it's a 5/5 blocker, So I like that this feels like a modal card in a way that a lot of mana rocks don't. But if you can afford to be less efficient and get more card quality, then it's going to be great for you. And if you're prioritizing efficiency, like many decks are these days, then you'll lean more on your 2-mana rocks or ramp cards. But it's an interesting card. I'm curious to see how it actually feels.
I will definitely probably die to it.
Yeah, it
Someone will
can
cast
definitely
it'll
kill
swing
people.
in for 5 in the air and you just didn't see it coming, and they won't feel like the type of deck that has that kind of capability. Because a lot of times you look at a deck or you're in the late games and you're just looking at them and like, they're probably not going to have haste. I can probably afford to tap out here because whatever they do, I will get another turn. They're probably not going to be able to. And if, maybe it's direct damage or something, I can't stop anyway. But you often make the calculation of how likely are they to have something with haste. I don't see a Greaves, blah, blah, blah. And this is going to feel like,
bong!
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't necessarily think that they have that card in their deck. So how would I know? And they're not a red deck. So yeah.
Cast Lightning. Follow it up with a Warring Triad.
Yeah.
There you go. Hitting for 10. As long as you have stuff in your graveyard. I don't know. All right, let's move on to the next card. I think we're going to see a lot of this little bird. This is Traveling Chocobo. 2 and a green for a 3/2 creature bird. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. If a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So this is the Ancient Green Warden text for lands, but also birds. And instead of playing cards out of your graveyard, you can play them off the top of your library.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just silo birds off.
Yeah.
If you've got a bird deck that has green in it, this is going to be really good.
It's great, yeah.
Because it will do the lands and the birds. You get both sides of it,
Right.
and a high percentage of cards in your deck will care about this.
Right.
So I think we can just say that blanketly. Birds decks, if you got green, you want to run this, it's going to be great.
There you go. But lands decks.
Yeah.
This says you can play lands off the top of your library and all your landfall triggered abilities trigger twice.
Seems amazing because previous to this, we need a 6-mana card to do this, and this is a 3-mana card. So
Right.
Because it's really the doubling up of the triggers.
The doubling is the reason you play the Ancient Green Warden. The ability to play lands from the graveyard is gravy and good gravy in those kind of decks.
Yep.
And it's going to feel the same for Traveling Chocobo as well.
Well, this replaces the play from graveyard with play from top of library.
Right.
And
So
I'd
it still
say
gives you
those
some sort of
things
advantage.
are roughly equivalent. Graveyard might be slightly better, but
Graveyard's definitely better because you can do the fetch land thing.
yeah, you can definitely do the fetch land thing.
Yeah.
But you are drawing a new card. I guess you are doing that out of the graveyard too. But either way, 3 mana versus 6. I mean, 3 mana is kind of shocking in that we've come to understand that 4 mana is what is the cost for doubling stuff. And there's like, no, we'll double these triggers for 3 and give you additional upside.
Yeah, in a lands deck, which is already a very powerful and popular strategy.
Yeah, I think this card would have been very good if you just removed the first 2 lines and it was only that if a land or bird entering causes a triggered ability.
Yeah.
That would have been still very good. And then they're just like, well, we can add 2 more upsides to it.
It's so crazy looking at it next to the Ancient Green Warden.
Yeah.
That is like, sure, Ancient Green Warden's bigger, but it's twice the amount of mana for a very comparable card.
It feels like it just instantly goes in all landfall decks.
It does.
Which all have green. And there's no way that this is not better than most of the cards in your deck. It's probably a top 10 card in all the landfall decks, right?
Yeah, I mean, both of these abilities are completely desirable and played already, and this is for way less mana than we expect for this effect. Not to mention that it's just like has additional weird synergies. I want to talk about a couple different things because I think you look at this card and we're just like, yeah, it's really good. You should play it in your lands decks.
Yep.
I wanted to talk about a few things to keep an eye on if you're playing Traveling Chocobo or if you're playing Ancient Green Warden. The first thing being it is a non-bow with bounce lands.
Yep, it's bad with bounce lands.
Bounce lands say when the bounce land enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Yes, that triggers twice.
You gotta bounce 2 lands.
Not great.
Makes a bounce land unplayable, yeah.
Not
I'm a
great.
big proponent of bounce lands. I like them in general. Don't put them in your landfall decks generally.
You're right. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because I've seen this interaction get confused a couple of different times by people with Omnath Locus of Creation decks. So this is for color Omnath. It has a landfall ability that says when the first time this triggers, you do this. The second time this triggers, you do this. The third time this triggers, you do this.
Right.
And the confusion is often when you play a land, and if that trigger is doubled by something like the Traveling Chocobo or the Ancient Green Warden, you get that ability 2 times, which is not the case. Because of the way that Omnath is worded, a land comes in and triggers his ability 2 times, which means you get the first ability and then the second ability, because that's the second time it triggers.
Yeah.
So all this really does is sort of rush you through the Omnath first trigger, second trigger, third trigger process. It doesn't give you twice the amount of value on each trigger. Doesn't mean it's bad in the deck, it just means it works differently.
Yeah. Makes sense because all the trigger does is say, okay, trigger this thing. And then the trigger itself says, once it's resolved, how many times has this happened?
Right.
I mean, that makes sense to me, but I get it.
Yes.
Those things are confusing.
It has happened a few times. I did want to mention that because there's something weird. Traveling Chocobo cares about birds, but it doesn't say other birds. So if Traveling Chocobo triggers and enters the battlefield ability, like an Impact Tremors or something, it triggers 2 times.
Yeah.
It triggers a Guardian Project 2 times, which is very bizarre. And that's all I have to say about that.
It's Panharmonicon.
But just for
birds.
its...
But it's not just enters. It's all like,
Yeah, but I mean, it's weird that it doubles its own ability. Like, you don't have to have other birds. You just, like, if you play this and you have a Guardian Project in play, that ability triggers 2 times.
Twice. That's cool.
Anyway.
I bet bird decks with green will be running a Guardian Project and Beast Whisperer as well. Okay.
All right, one
more card. It is Ishtola Rule, which is 4 blue for a 3/5 cat druid legendary creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Then, if it's the first end step of the turn, there is an additional end step.
Ooh.
Here we go. We've doubled upkeeps. We've doubled. Now we're doubling end steps.
Combats, cool. So this is Thassa Deep Dwelling, but it triggers 2 times, basically. And it makes your Thassa Deep Dwelling trigger 2 times. So there's a lot of different ways that you can evaluate this card. I think most of them start with it's 6 mana on a creature, so you have to be a little careful. But it's very good with any kind of end steps. If you have the Monarch in play, you get to draw 2 times off the Monarch. If you're playing Atraxa Praetor's Voice, you get to proliferate 2 times on your end step. I was looking at it in Shola Toyak because there's a Shola Toyak deck at the office.
Jordan has one.
And this is a very powerful end step trigger that says at the beginning of your end step, untap each permanent you control with a counter on it. So it's like Wilderness Reclamation, but it's on your commander.
Twice,
So East Shola really feels like it's right at home there. But that doesn't feel very difficult to figure out. That if you have an end step trigger on your commander, having 2 end steps, good.
Yeah, the question is 6 mana worth it for that other end step? And I think, you can decide if that's better than Strionic Resonator or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Rumming Throne or any various ways
better yeah, for sure. But this doesn't cost mana to do the second and the third time, so it very possibly is better,
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the Blinky aspect is probably what makes it go in the most 99s.
I agree.
So it plays the role of Conjurer's Closet or Thassa Deep Dwelling and will also double up those other ones. So if you've got Conjurer's Closet or Thassa's Deep Dwelling in your deck, Ishtola Rule becomes a pretty good candidate because you already know you wanted those effects. This is very similar and actually force multiplies the other ones.
Right.
Soul Herder happens again. You may not replace Soul Herder with this, but maybe you replace Conjurer's Closet with this because it's 5 mana and this is 6 and has additional upside. I think that 1 mana is probably worth it. So that's where I think we'll probably see it the most is in Blink decks or very specific, like you said, Atraxa, Shola Toyax.
Yeah, it's sort of like a weird Panharmonicon almost because it gives you sort of 2 blinks instead of giving you doubling the ETBs. It lets you it actually enter 2 times.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be a deck that's all about end steps that this is at the helm of, and that could be interesting. It's mono blue, so it kind of leaves you with much more limited options.
That's an interesting way to think about it that I hadn't thought about until right now. This card is sort of like Panharmonicon stapled to a Conjurer's Closet. Right? Because it gives you the blink ability and it gives you it a second time, so you get that ability 2 times. It's almost like those 2 cards in one.
A little. Panharmonicon, you can play multiple creatures and get multiple triggers off each of them. This is going to
for 2 more mana. So that does make it sort of smell better than it did a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah. I think there's definitely times in a Blink deck where 6 mana is worth it for this ability. Blink something twice, basically. And then maybe if I've got Soul Herder or something else out, I'm blinking 2 things twice. And that's 4 times.
Seems
and that
good.
becomes really good. Yeah.
That's Ishtola. Definitely more of a blink type of card, but I'm curious to see how that
I think there will be a
thing.
cool, people will get enough end step things and put it into mono blue and make a shell, and it'll work sometimes and not others because, I think you probably need 2 or 3 colors to really make that work good. But
I like it as a monarch deck because you can blink a creature that it takes the monarch and then draw 2 cards. That's kind of cool.
That's cool.
That's kind of cool.
But you need your Palace Jailer or something for that to be really good, right?
Yeah, there's ETB blue creatures that take the monarch, right? There's got to be.
Yeah, but they're not that good because we don't see them.
Because we've never heard
of
them.
You have to play a bad card. That's, I don't like playing bad cards to try and make my card good.
I do. That's my favorite. All right. Speaking of favorites, let's go to our favorite card in the 99 from Final Fantasy. There's a lot of cool ones that we talked about today, but of course we all have our own preferences. We've hinted at it a little bit, but Josh, which one was your favorite?
My favorite is Gogo, Master of Mimicry, and I fully acknowledge that it'll be sort of combo-tastic probably, and I will learn, or maybe I never learn this lesson, that was fun to do twice and I don't need to do it anymore.
I did it.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a lesson I'll just never learn, huh?
Yeah.
You guys saw that though, right?
That was cool. Yeah. All right, I won't do it again.
Yeah.
But cool.
I won't play this deck probably again for 5 years, but there we go. How about you?
I really like the Warring Triad. It's a weird card for me to just keep coming back to. I was like, can I build it? Is there anything interesting that you can do with this card? Like, where would I put it? And I was like, it's good in keywords. Like, I just keep kind of coming back to it and it feeling cool. But it doesn't exactly spell stuff out for you. So that is one I'm intrigued by. The one that makes me smile the most is of course, the Good King, Mog the 12th. He's really busted and very cute.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about what we think are the most powerful cards in the 99.
Yeah, this one's tricky because there's a lot of very narrow stuff.
Yeah. You picked first, so
I
didn't pick the one you picked, which I agree is probably the most powerful.
Yeah, it's the Chocobo. Being able to just draw cards, like draw lands off the top of your library, especially in decks with often have extra landfall abilities or land drop cards like explorations, is just really busted on its own, not to mention doubling all of the things that you have set up. It's just going to be a bird that demands answering.
Yeah, a good way for a card to be really powerful is just to have a very playable card that it's basically the same as, but it costs half as much mana.
Yeah, that's a pretty good place to start.
It's a pretty good way for the card to turn out to be really good.
Yeah,
if they just were like, hey, Panharmonicon, there's this, but it costs 2 now.
You're like, what?
Well, that's going to be powerful, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had 2. I had trouble picking another one, but I didn't want to, shortchange the viewers by us doing the same one. I said Cloud, which is the equipment tutor, because I do believe that we will see quite a bit of it, and its sort of middle case scenario is very good, and a lot of decks will want that. And then I said Lock, Treasure Hunter, which
is a good answer.
Which is narrow because it can't go in very many decks, but I think it will be Professional Facebreaker in those decks, and Professional Facebreaker is sort of secretly one of the better cards from like the last 5 years or whatever.
Anytime you can have a card that you look at and you're like, I want to make sure people know this is good. I think it's cool to include in these episodes where you're like, you read it and you're like, we've heard all that before. And then once you start doing the math, you're like, it's pretty real.
It's card draw and mana ramp.
It's pretty good.
It is those 2 things.
Pretty real.
Yeah. Anytime you put those 2 things on something, it's almost always good, especially when it's 3 mana value or less.
Yeah. Gonna see a lot of Lock, hopefully. To the listeners, what do you guys think about this set? Are you the Final Fantasy fan? There's a lot of them out there, so hopefully you're enjoying this. What new cards slot perfectly into your existing commander decks? Which one of these are you like, yes, King Mog? We want to know where you're putting your Moogles.
On the battlefield, probably.
A lot of them.
All right, before we go, let's talk about our sponsors one more time. CardKingdom.com/command. If you want to pick up these Final Fantasy cards, or if you're building decks around any of the new commanders and you need other cards from Magic's history, Card Kingdom has a huge inventory. They got the cards you're looking for in the condition and the version that you're looking for, and they are one retailer, which means all of the cards, you add them to your cart, you hit checkout, and one single package arrives on your doorstep with all the cards for your new deck, or maybe new decks if you get really ambitious. Decks with an S, plural, yep. Come all at once, you sleeve it up, and you're ready to go. It's instant gratification. You do not have to wait for all these disparate pieces to reach you, because I know that can be very frustrating. I don't like that myself. So again, CardKingdom.com/command, the best place to go to get all your Magic products and singles, anything at all.
And once you have those cards, of course, you need to protect them, keep them looking cool. Go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. If you need sleeves or playmats, binders, deck boxes, long boxes, they've got everything you need for storing and keeping your Magic cards safe and looking sweet. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, keep an eye out for their Final Fantasy product. I don't think it's been spoiled yet, but it is very exciting to see. And go pick up the Mana 8 line. MAGICCON is coming soon. We hope you're going to come see us at Game Nights Live. If you want to come to our signing, we love signing the Mana 8 stuff because we know it's going to look good in any marker that we have, and it's going to be a cool, clear memento for you to have from MAGICCON. Plus, you can get their playmat frame from Ultra Pro.
Oh, those are really cool.
And it just locks it into place. You can put it on the wall and remember your MAGICCON experience forever.
Yeah, Jimmy has one on his wall.
It looks
really sharp.
Sweet. Yeah.
Those frames are really, really cool.
Come see us at MAGICCON June 20th for Game Nights Live. I was going to say MAGICCON Live. They're always live. That's the whole thing. All right. Before we go, we got to say thank you to our amazing team here who helps with these long episodes and all of the other ones that make it possible. So thank you to Rachel Kender, Karina Cruz, Sebastian Salazar, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Eric Lem, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, and yours truly, Jimmy Wong.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Peace.